How are you today? So, today we're going to be basically going over a few different things. Hopefully, if I don't get tired again, but I think I can manage it. So I want to see about going over at least two, maybe more, of the trial exhibits from the 2020 search monopoly case. It was filed in 2020, but the trial exhibits we'll be going over are mostly from 2023, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're all possibly from 2023, but today's will definitely be from 2023. So first we'll go over what I can remember that we covered in the last couple of trial exhibits. Then we're gonna go over what I can muster through of new trial exhibits to us from the search monopoly case. And again, I keep reiterating this because it's so important to me. But the main reason I am so kind of obsessed with understanding all of this is I feel like the outcome of these cases are really going to determine where Google goes in the future. So the more we understand why decisions were made, the more we'll understand where we should be putting our efforts in terms of marketing in the future. Plus, this is the most information we are ever going to get from Google about how they work and function. The trial exhibits from this legal case, for example, like they were admitting in the trial exhibits that they basically fuck with the algorithm and the advertising so that they can profit more. And that's a rough, terrible summary in my understanding of what we've previously covered, kind of. And in the previous coverage, but way better explains all of that. But they've been kind of promoting on their front-facing verbiage about the Google ads, like it's an ad auction system, and they've really been leaning into the ad auction system concept to kind of excuse the way they influence the ad auction system to profit more. And so the exact methods of this, and not only how that happened, but also emails and documentation with people directing this to be done, all came out in the trial exhibits so far. For example, I don't know why the captioner said trial divisions. I can't speak. I said trial exhibits, but whatever. I'm not going to think about what else that captioner got wrong. So yeah, it's really important to me because this is the most we're really going to be able to understand, in my opinion, about the functions of Google. And I've seen a lot of people talk about this case in its entirety as a whole, in terms of what happened, why they're getting sued, and what was the outcome. But I haven't seen a lot of people really go into these trial exhibits and bring up this evidence, And I kind of wish more people would, particularly people with bigger following than me, that can actually get this information out in a good way to people who will receive it, because it's imperative, in my opinion, to understand this in terms of what has the 90% of the market share of advertising of all businesses been built off of. You know what I mean? So yeah. But anyway, so we're going to go over that. Sorry for that little ramble. And then we'll also be going over Safety First Boutique. I've kind of been using them as a case study for different methods that you can use to promote yourself online. And so previously we looked at her restock method in terms of generating sales and generating traffic. I kind of want to look at what she was doing now, and so I kind of want to just show you guys what her store is currently like, and then talk about those differences. And then I'll also just kind of take a look at her Instagram, where I realized why those changes have occurred as well. And so we'll talk about all of that, and we're going to talk about adjusting your business for your life, and we'll also be talking about different strategies of marketing through different times of your life. And then we'll finish out with lecture 8 of how to get started with so the how to start a startup playlist. It used to be Y Combinator. They changed their name to Y Root Access. So we're on the 8th lecture is about how to get started, as well as doing things that don't scale and press. And so we're going to be looking at all of that, and that has 3 different speakers as well. And I meant to talk about them last time, but I didn't get around to it because I got too tired. So that's why we may not do that many trial exhibits today, because I'm going to focus, if I can, on covering this other material as well. And then in my next live streams, I'll try and really bang out as many trial exhibits as I can get through. The captioner does not say exhibit right for me every time I say it. So maybe I'm saying it wrong, or maybe the captioner's not getting it, maybe both. But yeah, so the lecture 8 though, when we look at that from the how to start a startup playlist, that lecture features Stanley Tang, Walker Williams, and Justin Kahn. I don't know if I'm saying those names right, so I apologize. But yeah, so it's got the founder of Doordash, the founder of Teespring, and the founder of TwitchTV on it, and they'll be talking about how to get started, doing things that do not scale, as well as press. And so I'm going to kind of react to that, and I will be reacting to that on double speed. And so that's just to get through it, and because if I don't do that, it's going to be even longer, and we'll be sitting here even longer. And so the regular video is linked in the description of this video, and you can go watch it there without my commentary and in normal speed, you know. So yeah. Alrighty, I am going to roll my intro, and then we're going to go ahead and get started with the trial exhibits for Google 2023. We'll start off with a recap and then get into the new exhibits. So yeah. Hi, my name is Alexis, also known as Lexi or Deaf Child. I was born deaf, hard of hearing. I began doing business as Deaf Child 2013, marketing 2011, sales 2009. I've earned 50 plus certifications in marketing and sales. My Bachelor of Science from Loyola University, New Orleans, with a music industry studies major and a business administration minor. Deafness runs in my family genetically. Speech is not fully accessible to me. Anyway, I'm here to bitch about whatever the fuck is on my mind. So here we go. Visit my site at noladeafchild.com. So first up, just a recap on the trial exhibits where we left off. So we are currently on, because there are 2 different Google monopoly cases from the last 5 years, maybe ever, I don't know, but definitely within the last 5 years. And so there's the 2020 and the 2023 one. Today's live stream is going to be about the 2020 search monopoly case in Judge Mehta's court, M-E-H-T-A. The whole case was originally filed in 2020, and the exhibits today that we'll be looking at are from 2023. Previously, we have done 52, as I've said, and the last 2 that we did both were on emails. One was focused on the evolution of the revenue share agreement deals as it was happening in 2019, and the other one was on the updates of Android and Russia. Now, it's been so long since I've covered it. It's been literally like 8 months, maybe 9, about 8 or 9 months since I've covered all of this. So I can't remember off the top of my head so well the exact details of the content of these emails, but from what I remember, basically with the evolution of the revenue share agreement deals, Google was attempting to keep companies, particularly in America, locked into those revenue share agreements, and the reason being related to those next emails, in my opinion, related to those next emails being about how in Russia they no longer had those exclusivity agreements because it was no longer legalized and they were not allowed to really get that done in Russia. And so, if I understood all of this correctly, again, I'm not a lawyer. First of all, I'm not a lawyer, and second of all, I haven't looked at this shit in a long time. So I'm trying to just kind of vaguely remember off the top of my head, and I'm looking at all this from more of a marketing perspective. So yeah, because those last two emails, they were just more about like looking at how was Google going to continue profit, and would Google be losing market share, would, if they no longer had exclusivity with the revenue share agreement. Those were kind of like what those last two emails were looking into. So yeah, so now we're going to move on into our next let's see here, into our next trial exhibit. And so we're going to kick it off with a letter from David Drummond of Google to Bradford L. Smith from Microsoft regarding issues related to bundling MSN search with Internet Explorer 7.0 and Longhorn from July 22nd, 2005. And this is trial exhibit number UPX 0172. And it was originally filed on October 30th, 2023. Did I say in? Maybe that should be on. Whatever. So, looking at that, let's see. So Bradford L. Smith is General Counsel for Microsoft. So yeah. And it says, and it's got regarding here for the subject line of what we just read, issues related to bundling MSN search with Internet Explorer 7.0 and Longhorn. And it says, Dear Brad, on Wednesday, July 6th, a group of people, wait, am I muted? No, I'm not. Okay, I'm out of it. Okay, my bad. Okay, Dear Brad, on Wednesday, July 6th, a group of people from Microsoft spoke with Google for the first time about Microsoft's plan for the inline search feature of Internet Explorer 7.0, i.e. 7. Microsoft also provided Google a 12-page term sheet and told Google that if it wanted to be considered as a search provider in the Beta 1 release of IE 7, it would need to agree to those terms by Tuesday, July 12th. Google is seriously troubled by this approach, both in terms of process and substance. Not enough time. As a matter of process, Microsoft's decision to give Google, and presumably other search providers, such short notice is simply unreasonable. Given the potentially serious implications for consumers and for popular search providers like Google, we see no legitimate reason why Microsoft chose to leave so little time for discussions. The result was no opportunity for any meaningful dialogue, and the main concerns we raised were met with a response along the lines of, we appreciate your points, but there isn't enough time to change anything before the Beta 1 release. Despite our serious, substantive concerns about Microsoft's proposal, we felt we had no choice but to sign the term sheet on Microsoft's terms. But, as you hopefully recognize, this process failed in its stated goal of gaining meaningful input. The defective process is particularly troubling in light of serious, substantive concerns with Microsoft's intended approach for inline search. How the default is set. As an initial matter, Microsoft's stated approach sets the default search provider for inline search in IE 7 by migrating the default search setting from previous versions of IE. We note in this regard that all previous versions of Internet Explorer, or IE in this document, set Microsoft's own search as the default search setting. And since very few users are aware of the auto search feature in previous versions of IE, as even the employees from Microsoft acknowledged, that original default setting has very seldom been changed to popular search providers that users actually employ, like Google. These facts make it quite clear that migrating the older search setting is not an objective or reasonable approach. Instead, migrating that hidden setting benefits Microsoft while effectively eliminating any meaningful user choice about the default search provider in IE 7. In other words, Microsoft's approach puts its own interests above those of end users. We proposed instead that users be prompted to select the default search provider the first time they use the inline search feature. This approach eliminates any company's own self-interest and places control in the hands of the end user where it belongs. It also helps to ensure that users understand they have a lot of choice. What am I saying a lot of? They have a choice of search providers when using the new search bots in IE7. We were told this could not be considered for Beta 1 because of the short time deadline. How the default is changed. The problems with the default setting are further compounded by how changes to the default are handled. As you know, most end users, am I saying that right? Most end users do not change defaults. And even the few who might try to make a change from the drop-down menu in IE7 will be surprised to learn that their choice will revert to the original default the next time they start IE7. Making changes in the drop-down menu temporary rather than permanent differs from normal convention and is especially likely to mislead and confuse end users. Undoubtedly, of the tiny fraction of end users who try to change the default, many will become frustrated and simply leave the default as originally set, in all likelihood to MSN search in light of Microsoft's previous setting of the default. We raised this issue with Microsoft as well, and, again, were told that was not enough time to consider our suggestions. We were also told, I don't think I'm speaking right, by way of consolation, that in theory, OEMs, and this is operating equipment manufacturers, might change the default setting. Until Longhorn is released, however, almost all installations of IE7 will come as upgrades by end users without involvement of OEMs. How the search providers are selected. We also have serious concerns about the approach for selecting the search providers included in the drop-down list. We are informed that Microsoft would like the list in the Beta 1 release to include the top search providers by market share. That approach seems sensible, as the selection criterion is related to search providers that end users are likely to want to use. But we are also told that the list will change over time, with the list of providers being determined by how many referrals are sent to the Windows Genuine Advantage WGA program. We can empathize with your desire to promote the WGA program, and we may well be willing to help you with that, within reason. But collaborating on an anti-piracy program should be unrelated to deciding which search providers are in the drop-down list. Using that as a criterion for deciding who is in the drop-down list is bad for users, since it is unrelated to the popularity or quality of search services. We see no legitimate reasons why Microsoft should not continue using an objective, well, did I say should not? It says would not. We see no legitimate reason why Microsoft would not continue using an objective measure of search provider usage, as you would want to do that for the Beta 1 release, which is clearly best for end users. I don't think I said that right again. Whatever, we're going to keep going. Functional problems with the Beta 1 release. Although we have not had much time to evaluate the Beta 1 release we were provided, we have already noticed the serious problem with it. Upon installation, it disables any toolbars that the user might have previously installed. Obviously, this is a big concern for us in terms of our Google toolbar, and presumably for other toolbar providers as well. When we contacted our liaison at Microsoft, Brian Schuster, about this, we were told that it was a regression bug and was being worked on by the technical team. It is critical that this be fixed immediately and that any beta version with this behavior not be distributed to any Google toolbar users. Again, more lead time would have helped prevent this problem. Impact on the market for search services. To date, the market for search has been highly competitive. The rate of innovation has been rapid, and consumers have enjoyed the benefits. Google believes that the search market should remain competitive. We are deeply concerned about the potential for harm to the competitive process from Microsoft's actions, particularly given Microsoft's monopoly position with its Windows OS and its IE browser. By pushing out an update of IE with a new search box that will default to Microsoft's own search product in the vast majority of cases, Microsoft would gain a large number of search users for reasons having nothing to do with the merits of Microsoft's search offering. We believe that tying Microsoft's web search offering to its browser in this way would raise very serious issues under the antitrust and unfair competition laws of various jurisdictions. Isn't this not the pot calling the kettle black? Anyway, particularly in light of Microsoft's prior conduct and related findings by the U.S. Department of Justice, U.S. courts, and the European Commission. Oh, things that didn't age well. Tying search services to Microsoft's operating system would raise the same issues. We hope you agree with us that when it comes to monopoly products, such as the Windows OS or the IE browser, consumers are entitled to be informed clearly at the outset about their ability to select the default search product and should be given a simple means of doing so the first time they use the search functionality. This is indispensable both to preserve competition on the merits in search and to avoid distortion of competition in related markets. Therefore, we request that Microsoft reconsider its plans for IE7 and modify it in line with the attached revised term sheet that we previously sent to Microsoft. Finally, although Google hopes that legal action will not be necessary, we recognize that it is a foreseeable possibility. Accordingly, Google requests that Microsoft take care to retain all past and future records relating to any plans to tie search to any Microsoft product or otherwise deprive consumers of a competitive choice in search. This would of course include any records regarding Microsoft's plans to target Google. We look forward to your response. Redacted signature here, David Drummond. And then we have a co-marketing term sheet with respect to inline search in IE7 for Windows XP SP2 and the next release of Windows, codenamed Longhorn. So, anybody wondering what the fuck Longhorn is? That is the code name for their Windows release that they were planning around 2019. But what I find interesting is, to my understanding, taking it back here, so this says, oh, I apologize, not 2019. I think I was thinking of 2019 because that was the last email we looked at. The last thing we looked at was from 2019. This is from 2005. 2005. My bad. I apologize. Okay. Let's get on the right timeline here. So it says this term sheet is, oh man, that speaks even more to me about like what was happening with everything. Okay, all right, okay, now I'm processing. Where were we, you know, or when were we, rather. Yeah. Depending on the time of year, I was either at the end of my 5th grade year or the beginning of my 6th grade year in 2005. Yeah. Anyway, okay, back on topic. I was thinking of track and topic at the same time. I combined the two words. Alright, but for real. So it says this term sheet is made the date of 2005, effective date between Microsoft Corporation of 1 Microsoft Way, Redmond, Washington, 98007, USA, Microsoft of the one part, and Google Incorporated of 1600 Amphitheater Parkway. Did I say that right? If anybody drinks, which I don't anymore, that could be a fun drinking game. Anytime I ask if I said something right in a live stream, you take a shot, you're just gonna get fucking wasted. Anyway, 1600 Amphitheater Parkway, or anytime I say something wrong, regardless of if I asked if I said it wrong. Alright, Mountain View, California, partner of the other part. So, whereas A, Microsoft develops and markets the web browser known as Microsoft Internet Explorer. B, partner develops and markets the web service known as Google Web Search, as well as other services described as google.com. C, Microsoft is developing the next version of Microsoft Internet Explorer, known as Internet Explorer 7, which we will have a new internet search feature known as inline search. And this is the code name Longhorn. E, Microsoft recognizes that promotion of the WGA program on partners' website is a valuable and visible marketing mechanism, and is desirous of having the WGA program promoted on partners' website to encourage end users to use genuine Microsoft software. F, commencing from the Beta 1 release of Internet Explorer 7, expected to be in July 2005, Microsoft would like to pre-populate the drop-down menu with a number of links to web services, including partners, to enable the end user to have a choice of search providers, and G, to determine which links will be pre-populated in the inline search drop-down menu, and to promote the WGA program, the parties have agreed to negotiate in good faith a definitive agreement largely based on the terms contained in this term sheet. Proposed terms of the agreement are 1. Definitions. 1.1. Affiliates means with respect to any legally recognizable entity, and any other such entity directly or indirectly controlling, controlled by, or under common control with such entity. Control, as used in this definition, means the possession, directly or indirectly, of the power to direct or cause the direction of the management and policies of a legally recognizable entity, whether through the ownership of voting shares or other interests, by contract or otherwise. 1.2. Agreement means that it's executed. I'm like reading this weird. Okay, means the executed agreement between the parties arising from this term sheet to be executed no later than the release of Beta 2 IE 7. 1.3. Co-marketing program means the program, as evidenced by this term sheet, to promote partners' presence on IE7's inline search drop-down menu and Microsoft's WGA program. 1.4. IE7 means Microsoft's web browser, known as Microsoft Internet Explorer 7 for Windows XP SP2, and Microsoft Internet Explorer 7 for Windows Longhorn, and all subsequent releases and updates commercially released during the term of this term sheet and the agreement. 1.5. Inline search means a control in the frame of IE7, which accepts text search queries from end users and passes the queries to the provider the user chooses from a drop-down menu. 1.6. Inline search list means the web services from MSN and providers listed in the drop-down menu of IE7's inline search. 1.7. Longhorn means the next major release of the Microsoft Windows operating system, codenamed Longhorn. 1.8. NDA means the non-disclosure agreement between the parties set forth in Exhibit A. So there's an NDA. 1.9. OEM means original equipment manufacturer. 1.10 Partners marks means partners, trademarks, and logos set forth in Exhibit B. 1.11 Providers means the providers of web services participating in co-marketing program other than MSN Search. 1.12 Service level requirements means Microsoft's service level requirements for the provision of web services by providers as set forth in the agreement. 1.13 Test specs means the specifications of the providers. Means the specifications that providers will use for certifying that a web service behaves as expected with inline search. 1.14 Web services means the internet search or other search services provided by providers under the co-marketing program. 1.15 WGA program means the Microsoft Windows Genuine Advantage program designed to promote awareness and usage of genuine Microsoft software. More information about the WGA program can be found at, and they have a link here. This link is provided for informational purposes only, and nothing contained on this web page shall be deemed to be part of this term sheet. 2. Term sheet not legally binding. 2.1. This term sheet is intended to enable the parties to discuss and arrive at the agreement with respect to the inclusion of partner in the inline search, with the exception of sections 1, 3, and 9, 17. The terms contained in this term sheet shall not be legally binding on the parties. 9 through 17. 2.2. The parties agree to negotiate in good faith, but are aware that the development and marketing plans for IE7 are subject to change. Microsoft shall make reasonable commercial efforts to keep partner informed of any development and marketing changes that could impact the terms of this term sheet. 3. Inline search. 3.1. Microsoft's current plan for inline search in IE7 is to pre-populate the inline search list with an initial list of 4 links to web services for each regional locale. A 5th link will be for MSN search. A 6th link in the drop-down menu will be available for pre-population by an OEM in the event IE7 is distributed by an OEM. The number of regional locales, the final number and sort order of web services in inline search list shall be determined by Microsoft in its sole discretion. 3.2. Microsoft recognizes that OEMs have the ability to modify the list of web services and set the default web service for inline search. Microsoft shall not interfere with OEM's arrangements with partner or others related to inline search. 3.3. Microsoft will permit the end user or administrator to delete, add, and sort web services in the drop-down menu. On first use of the inline search features, IE7 will prompt the user to select any search provider in the inline search menu or a provider on the Microsoft Search Guide page as the default search provider. Thereafter, Microsoft will respect the user's choice of default search provider and other search engine settings set by the end user and will not change these settings during subsequent updates or upgrades of IE. 3.4. For the avoidance of doubt, the parties recognize that MSN search shall be included in inline search on first installation, including but not limited to migration scenarios and new installs subject to the OEM adding and selecting a default web service and the end user and administrator being able to subsequently modify or remove MSN search. initial pre-population of partners in inline search drop-down menu. 4.1. For all releases of IE7 from Beta 1 up to and including the commercial release of IE7 and subsequent updates, Microsoft will pre-populate the inline search list with 4 web services from 4 providers for each regional locale. 4.2. Qualifying criteria for placement in inline search list in a specific regional locale shall be determined by whether a provider is A. within the top 4 providers in a specific regional locale, B. is measured by an independent survey where available and of Microsoft's choosing, as having at least 5% of all search traffic in the aforesaid region, and C. for IE7 Beta 2 and later releases within the first 6 months after the first commercial release of IE7, whether the provider has signed an agreement. 4.3. Partner agrees to consider in good faith its participation in the co-marketing program. Here's the fun part for me. 5. Co-marketing program. 5.1 was deleted, unfortunately for me. Oh, never mind, it's right here, it's below. I thought it was deleted. On the right hand side of this document, it's been listing all the shit that was deleted, but I've just been ignoring that because fuck it, it was deleted. So anyway, maybe I should have been paying attention. Whatever, we're here now. So, where was I? 5.1. Co-marketing program. It says Microsoft will provide partner with unique WGA program URL links and WGA program content. For example, banner ads and or WGA logo within 30 days of receipt and no later than September 30th, 2005. Partner will consider promoting the WGA program by inserting the aforesaid links and WGA program content on its web pages so as to promote the WGA program. The placement frequency, scheduling, and location of the URL links and WGA program content, if any, shall be at the discretion of partner. 5.2. The number of unique users transferred to the WGA program webpage via the unique URL links will be tracked and measured by Microsoft. 5.3. Commencing from the date of commercial release of IE7, Microsoft will, after every 3-month period, report to partner. A. The number of unique users transferred by partner to the WGA program webpage via the unique URL. B. The click-through rate of its unique users. And C. Which quartile of all providers results partner is in. 5.4. Microsoft will report provider data relating to subsection 5.3a and 5.3b in aggregate to protect the confidentiality of providers. 5.5. The number and order of web services in the inline search list within a given region shall be determined by Microsoft based on end-user preferences and may be updated in later releases of Internet Explorer. 5.6. At regular intervals, see section 5.8 below, starting after the first commercial release of IE7, Microsoft will create a new list of links to web services from providers to pre-populate the inline search list on a going forward basis based on an objective third-party measure of popularity of each web service with consumers. 5.7. The current plan for the Beta 1 and 2 releases of IE7 is that the 4 qualified providers will be listed in the drop-down menu in alphabetical order, starting with A from the top of the menu. The final plan for the number and sort order of providers in inline search list for the commercial release of IE7 has not yet been determined by Microsoft. 5.8. Pre-population and updating of inline search lists after commercial release of IE7 will be as follows. A. In the first commercial release of IE7 released to manufacturing, OEMs and the web Microsoft will include in the build of IE7 links to the 4 initial providers. B. After the first 6 month of, am I speaking right? After the first 6-month period measured by Microsoft pursuant to Section 5.3 and in accordance with Section 5.6, when an end user of IE7 establishes an internet connection with Microsoft during initial setup, Microsoft will download onto the end user's computer the updated inline search list of providers. C. For the avoidance of doubt, all setup is subject to Section 3.3. D. Microsoft will update the inline search list every 6 months during the term of the agreement, or if the report referred to in Section 5.4 is released within 4 weeks prior to a scheduled commercial release of a new Windows release or service pack, Microsoft may delay updating the inline search list until the build of IE7 releases to manufacturing, OEMs, and the web updated links. In no event shall Microsoft change the default search settings already set by a user in IE7. 5.9. Notwithstanding that Partner is not on the inline search list, Microsoft will list Partner on a website listing search engines developed and hosted by Microsoft, Microsoft Search Guide. Microsoft shall make reasonable commercial efforts to promote the Microsoft Search Guide via links in its websites and or from within IE7. 6. Microsoft's obligations. 6.1. Within 15 days of the effective date of this term sheet, Microsoft shall deliver to Partner the test specs. 6.2. Microsoft shall provide Partner with updates, bug fixes, or other modifications to the test specs no later than it offers the same to other providers or MSN. Partner's obligations. 7.1. Oh, 7 is item 7 is Partner's obligations. I'm out of it. So we're on 7.1 now. Partner agrees that in order to participate in the co-marketing program and to provide a good end user experience, the web services provided to end users will meet, if not exceed, the service level requirements. Item number 8, licenses and proprietary rights. 8.1. If inline search is enabled to render Partner's marks, Partner hereby grants Microsoft a non-exclusive, royalty-free, non-transferable, worldwide right and license during the term of this term sheet and the agreement to use, reproduce, distribute, and display Partner's marks in the inline search. Partner has the right to approve any use of Partner's marks featured in the inline search prior to commercial use and display by Microsoft, but Partner shall not unreasonably withhold or delay such approval. 8.2. Partner features grants Microsoft a non-exclusive, Partner further grants Microsoft a non-exclusive, royalty-free, non-transferable worldwide right and license during the term of this term sheet and the agreement to use, publicly perform and display screenshots and or interactive versions of Partner's marks rendered in inline search for the purposes of demonstrating Microsoft's products and or services at trade shows or other industry or press events. 8.3. Microsoft may use Partner's marks in promotional materials for the purposes of promoting IE7 and other related Microsoft products and services, subject to A. Microsoft's compliance with written logo usage guidelines that Partner may provide to it in advance, and B. Partner's prior approval of Microsoft's use of Partner marks and representative samples of such promotional materials, which approval shall not be unreasonably withheld or delayed. 8.4. Nothing in this agreement limits Microsoft's fair use and referential use of Partner's marks. 8.5. All rights in the partner's marks not expressly granted herein are reserved by partner. And now we're going to be moving on to item number 9, term and termination. So, 9.1. The term of this term sheet commences on the effective date and unless earlier terminated in accordance with section 9.3, expires on the execution of the agreement. 9.2. The term of the agreement commences on the date stated in the agreement and, unless earlier terminated in accordance with section 9.3, expires on December 31st, 2006. 9.3. Either party may terminate this term sheet and the agreement immediately upon written notice at any time if the other party materially breaches the obligations referenced in section 14, confidentiality. 9.4. In addition, either party may suspend performance and or terminate this term sheet and the agreement immediately upon written notice at any time if the other party is in material breach of any term, condition, or covenant of the agreement uttered in section 14, confidentiality, and fails to cure that breach within 30 days after written notice thereof. 9.5. Either party may terminate this term sheet and the agreement as provided in section 18.6 relating to assignment. So yeah. And now we're moving on to item number 10. Or section number 10 rather. Representations and warranties. Disclaimer of warranties. 10.1. Partner represents and warrants that at all times during the term of this term sheet and the agreement, A. Partner has and shall have all requisite corporate power and authority to execute and deliver this term sheet and the agreement to perform its obligations hereunder and to consummate the transactions contemplated hereby. B. As of the effective date, partner is not aware of any pending or, to its knowledge, threatened claims, suits, actions, or charges by third parties pertaining to its services contemplated under this term sheet and the agreement, including, without limitation, any claims or allegations that any or all of the services contemplated under this term sheet or the agreement violates or misappropriates the intellectual property rights of any third party. C. Partner has obtained and will maintain all rights and licenses necessary to operate its services contemplated under this term sheet and the agreement. And D. Partner's negotiation and entry into this term sheet and the agreement, its performance hereunder, and Microsoft's exercise of rights granted or authorized by partner under this term sheet and the agreement will not violate, conflict with, interfere with, result in a breach of, or constitute a default under any other agreement to which it is a party. So I've been kind of like reading through, kind of getting through the material, in my head, but I realized I feel like I'm not adding as much commentary as I should. So I'm going to just sum this all up real quick. Right now we are currently on item, or section rather, 10.2. So we need to come back to 10.2. So far, this is an email from, to the Council of Brad, who is from Microsoft, from Google to Brad of Microsoft. And it's basically like, hey man, you didn't give us enough time to have our input, so what the fuck? Is basically the summary of this email, to my understanding. You know what I'm saying? And so they're basically putting in here like, we don't mind promoting you guys, but we need to make sure that we're going to still be able to make as much money as we want to make. And also, at this point, this was, like 20 years ago, so at this point, Google was nowhere near to in a position to be charged as a monopoly as they are now, And so at this point, Microsoft had been the monopoly that had just gotten busted. So Google was basically throwing that in their face like, hey, and don't forget, you were a monopoly, so you need to act right, in my opinion. You know what I mean? And attached was a co-marketing term sheet that Microsoft had provided. And the co-marketing term sheet was basically like, we want if you want to maintain presence in our search bar, then we want you to make sure that you are promoting us, in my understanding. Roughly is basically what this is saying. Like, make sure that you are promoting us. And they were asking for for placements, and basically saying like you've got a certain amount of time to decide whether or not you're going to promote us or not. Basically, in my opinion, is like kind of like the rough summary of what's happening here. You know what I mean? And then with the termination clause of this agreement too, that one, they're basically kind of like, so this agreement is effective, but if either of us violate confidentiality, then this shit is over. But if we fuck up anything else about this deal, then we have a month to fix it before this agreement is void. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the too long didn't read of what we've read so far, my commentary, my interpretation, my processing of all of this, what I'm kind of getting from it. It's a lot of legalese. So yeah. Alrighty, now let's keep going. Section 10.2 next here. It says Microsoft represents and warrants that at all times during the term of this term sheet and the agreement, A, Microsoft has all requisite corporate power and authority to execute and deliver this term sheet and the agreement, to perform its obligations hereunder, and to consummate the transactions contemplated hereby. And B, Microsoft's negotiation and entry into this term sheet and the agreement, its performance hereunder, and partners' exercise of rights granted or authorized by Microsoft under this term sheet and the agreement will not violate, conflict with, interfere with, result in a breach of, or constitute a default under any other agreement to which it is a party. And now we're in 10.3. It's in all caps, and I just really feel like it's yelling at me, so I kind of want to yell it, but my person's asleep. Okay, so 10.3. Sections 10.1 and 10.2 contain the only warranties made by the parties in connection with this term sheet and the agreement. Any and all software, technology, services, documentation, materials, or information licensed or otherwise provided by either party to the other hereunder is provided as is, without warranty of any kind, and the entire risk as to satisfactory quality, performance, accuracy, and effort is with the recipient. To the extent permitted by applicable law, each party disclaims all other representations, conditions, and warranties, express or implied, including but not limited to any implied warranties of company ability or fitness for a particular purpose, and any duties of lack of negligence or workmanlike effort. The fuck type of shit is this? Anyway, okay. Other than as expressly set forth in Section 10, there is no warranty, duty, or condition of title, quiet enjoyment, quiet possession. There is no enjoyment. Yeah, nobody's enjoying this shit. Anyway, quiet enjoyment, quiet profession, correspondence to description, or non-infringement with respect to any and all software, technology, services, documentation, materials, or information licensed or otherwise provided by either party to the other hereunder in connection with this agreement. Moving on. Number 11. Exclusion of incidental, consequential, and certain other damages, limitation of liability, and remedies. Except for payments to the third parties covered by the indemnification provisions in Section 12, indemnification, or breaches of Section 14, confidentiality, in no event will either party be liable for any special, punitive, incidental, indirect, or consequential damages whatsoever, including, but not limited to, damages for loss of profits or confidential or other information, for business interruption, and for any other pecuniary or other loss whatsoever, arising out of or in any way related to any deficiency of the software, technology, services, documentation, materials, or information under or in connection with any provision of agreement, even in the event of default, tort, including negligence, strict liability, breach of contract, or breach of warranty by Microsoft, partner, or any supplier, and even if a party has been advised of the possibility of such damages. The foregoing limitations, exclusions, and disclaimers apply to the maximum extent permitted by applicable law, even if any remedy fails its essential purpose. 12. Indemnification. 12.1. Partner indemnity. Partners shall indemnify, defend, and hold harmless Microsoft, its affiliates, and each of their respective officers, directors, employees, representatives, licensees, and agents. Microsoft indemnities from and against and in respect of any and all claims, liabilities, allegations, suits, actions, investigations, judgments, deficiencies, settlements, inquiries, charges, demands, or other proceedings of whatever nature or kind, each a claim, whether formal or informal, brought by a third party against any Microsoft entity, as well as from and against and in respect of any and all damages, liabilities, losses, costs, charges, fees, and expenses, including without limitation reasonable legal fees and expenses, as and when incurred, relating to, based upon, incident to, arising from, or in connection with any third-party claim, if such claim is. Before we go into what those claims are, I'm just summarizing so far. They're basically saying with all of this, if some bullshit goes down, nobody's responsible for each other's shit. Everybody's on their own, and all of that. That's basically what they're trying to say, in my opinion. So they're saying if there's any claims, no one's paying shit for claims such as A, based upon allegations that, if true, would constitute breach by partner of any of its obligations, representations, or warranties set forth in this term sheet or the agreement, including without limitation any of the respective exhibits. B, based on an allegation that Partners Web Services is or contains any material or information that is obscene, defamatory, libelous, or slanderous, or that violates any law or regulation, or violates any rights of any person or entity, including without limitation rights of publicity, privacy, or personality, or has otherwise resulted in consumer fraud, product liability, tort, deceptive trade practice, breach of contract, injury, damage, or harm of any kind to any third party, or infringes on any third party rights, including intellectual property rights, or notwithstanding any provisions of this term sheet and the agreement to the contrary, other than with respect to claims arising from or related to partners' intentional or reckless misconduct and or copyright infringement or violations, partners' maximum indemnification obligation pursuant to this section 12.1 shall be $1 million. Partners 1 indemnification obligations under this term sheet and the agreement do not modify and are not limited by prior agreements entered into between the parties. Okay, so now they're basically saying they're not going to hold each other responsible for shit each other does, for most of the shit each other does, except for some things. And if certain shit goes down, then the most they're going to hold each other for is $1 million. If I understood that correctly. All right. So 12.2, Microsoft indemnity. Microsoft shall indemnify, defend, and hold harmless partner, its affiliates, and each of their respective officers, directors, employees, representatives, licensees, and agents, partners' indemnities, from and against, and in respect and any and all claims, whether formal or informal, brought by a third party against any partner indemnity, as well as from and against and in respect of any and all damages, liabilities, losses, costs, charges, fees, and expenses, including, without limitation, reasonable legal fees and expenses, as and when incurred, relating to, based upon incident to, arising from, or in connection with any third-party claim. Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, they were saying like, if you some shit goes down with you, in my opinion, you know, if I understood correctly, they were like, if some shit goes down with you and we had nothing to do with it, we're not going to hold you responsible. If some shit goes down with you that could impact us, then we're going to hold you responsible up to like $1 million. And then they're saying, if you do some shit to us, then we're going to hold you responsible. If I'm understanding this correctly, I could be wrong. And so then it says, if such claims are A, based upon allegations that if true would constitute breach by Microsoft of any of its obligations, representations, or warranties set forth in this term sheet and the agreement, including without limitation any of their respective exhibits, or B, to the extent that any WGA program content developed and created or otherwise supplied by Microsoft, in whole or in part, to partner as promotional content to be placed under the terms of this term sheet, and the agreement is or contains any material or information that is obscene, defamatory, libelous, or slanderous, or infringes any third-party rights, including intellectual property rights. Notwithstanding, okay, these are very similar wording. The wording here is also similar. I almost thought I was reading the same thing twice. I guess I kind of am. Anyway, it says, notwithstanding any provisions of this term sheet and the term sheet to the contrary, other than with respect to claims arising from or related to Microsoft's intentional or reckless misconduct and or copyright infringement or violations, Microsoft's maximum indemnification obligation pursuant to this 12.2 shall be $1 million. Microsoft's indemnification obligations under this term sheet and the agreement do not modify and are not limited by prior agreements entered into in between the parties. And then we're moving on into item number 13, procedures. So, 13.1, settlement. Each party agrees that it may not, without the other's prior written consent, enter into any settlement or compromise of any claim that results in any admission of liability or wrongdoing on the part of the other party or its affiliates. 13.2, control. Each indemnifying party has the sole right to control the defense and settlement of any claim to the extent that it is providing indemnification hereunder. Nevertheless, the indemnified party may, at its own expense, participate by itself and or through any counsel of its choosing in the defense of any such claim. 13.3. Notice. Each party shall notify the other promptly if such party becomes aware of any actual or potential claims by third parties that could affect either party's ability to fully perform its duties or to exercise its rights under this agreement. 14. Confidentiality. The parties acknowledge that the specific terms and conditions of this term sheet and the agreement, and the parties' disclosures and activity in connections with this term sheet and the agreement are confidential information, as that term is defined in the NDA, that is subject to the provisions of the NDA. Number 15. No obligation or independent development. Nothing in this term sheet and the agreement should be construed as restricting either party's ability to acquire, license, develop, manufacture, or distribute for itself, or have others acquire, license, develop, manufacture, or distribute for itself similar technology and web services performing the same or similar functions as the technology and web services contemplated by this term sheet and the agreement, or lawfully to market and distribute such similar technology and web services in addition to or in lieu of the technology contemplated by this term sheet and the agreement. Number 15, no exclusivity. The obligations under this term sheet and the agreement are not exclusive. Nothing herein prevents partner from performing similar services for or entering similar agreements with third parties. Number 17, notices and requests. All notices and requests in connection with this term sheet and the agreement are deemed given as of the day they are received, either by messenger, delivery service, or in the mails, postage prepaid, certified, or registered. Return receipt requested at address as follows. And then it's got the way they want it addressed listed here, or to such other addresses as a party may designate pursuant to this notice provision. Item number 18, general. 18.1, governing law, venue, and jurisdiction. This term sheet and the agreement will be governed by the laws of the state of New York without reference to the conflict of law principles thereof. Any action or litigation concerning this term sheet and the agreement will take place exclusively in the federal or state courts in New York, and the parties expressly consent to jurisdiction of and venue in such courts, and waive all defenses of lack of personal jurisdiction and forum non-convenience with respect to such courts. Process may be served on either party in the manner authorized by applicable law or court rule. 18.2, attorney's fees. In any action or suit to enforce any right or remedy under this term sheet or the agreement, or to interpret any provision of this term sheet or the agreement, the prevailing party shall be entitled to seek to recover its costs, including reasonable attorney's fees. And now we're on 18.3, no partnership. Neither this term sheet or the agreement, nor any terms and conditions contained herein, creates a partnership, joint venture, agency relationship, or grants a franchise. 18.4, waivers. No waiver of any breach of any provision of this term sheet or the agreement constitutes a waiver of any prior, concurrent, or subsequent breach of the same or any other provisions hereof, and no waiver is effective unless made in writing and signed by an authorized representative of the waiving party. 18.5, severability. If any provision of this term sheet or the agreement is held by a court of competent jurisdiction to be illegal, invalid, or unenforceable, the parties intend that the remaining provisions should remain in full force and effect. 18.6, assignment. Partner may not assign this term sheet or the agreement or any other rights or obligations hereunder, whether by operation of contract, law, or otherwise, except with the express written consent of Microsoft, and any attempted assignment by partner in violation of this section shall be void. Notwithstanding the foregoing, partner may assign this term sheet or the agreement as part of a reorganization, merger, acquisition, change of control, or similar transaction without Microsoft's prior written approval, if such transaction does not A, give a controlling interest, majority ownership, or the largest interest in partner to an entity that did not have any ownership interest in partner as it existed on the effective date, or B, sell or otherwise transfer more than 50% of partner's assets, whether in a single transaction or series of transactions. As used herein, entities shall include, without limitation, an individual, partnership, corporation, trust, or limited liability company. Microsoft may not assign this term sheet or the agreement or any rights or obligations hereunder, whether by operation of contract, law, or otherwise, except with the express written consent of partner, and any attempted assignment by Microsoft in violation of this section 18.6 shall be void. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary herein, Microsoft may assign this term sheet or the agreement as part of a reorganization, merger, acquisition, change of control, or other similar transaction without partner's prior approval. Okay, so from what I'm getting so far, they're basically saying, like, since the liability shit, we cover the liability, right? So since then, they basically are like, look, if shit goes down, but like nobody can own each other's shit. We are our own separate people. This does not constitute any agreement that means we own the rights to anything about each other. They're also saying, like, if anything does go down, you need to address your issues in this way to these people, and you also, we're going to be following this state law, which would be New York. We're all following New York state law. We're going to settle any of our issues in court there, is what they're saying. They agreed that winner's going to pay attorney fees. They're also saying with assignment, like, basically, like, nobody else can be assigned, or like if you sell your company and shit like that, like you can't just go be selling your company and then have this agreement be in effect without prior consent of Microsoft. You know what I'm saying? But you can restructure if needed without prior consent, is what I get from this. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just give somebody else these rights without their agreement, is what they're saying. Okay, 18.7, entire agreement. The agreement, including its exhibits, constitutes the entire agreement between the parties with respect to the subject matter hereof, and supersedes all prior and contemporaneous agreements or communications as to each subject matter. So they're saying this agreement supersedes all agreements. And that doesn't make sense to me, right? Because if this agreement supersedes all contemporaneous agreements or communications as to the subject matter, then does that mean a waiver can actually waive anything, or what? I don't understand the law enough to get that. I'm just saying, like, that itself seems, as someone who doesn't know the legal implications of these words, it seems hypocritical, right? Okay, anyway, and then it says, I forgot if I finished reading this or not, but who cares? It says the agreement may not be modified except by a written agreement dated subsequent to the date of the agreement and signed on behalf of partner and Microsoft by their respective duly authorized representatives. In witness thereof, the parties have entered into this term sheet as of the effective date. And it's got all of that shit there. And yeah, all right. And then it looks like it's just kind of like a fax transmission thing, and it's so that's all of this letter. We've finished this bitch now. So basically, just to kind of recap, this is a letter. It is a letter from David Drummond of Google to Bradford L. Smith of Microsoft. It's a legal counsel letter regarding issues related to bundling MSN search with Internet Explorer 7.0 and Longhorn. Longhorn is the code name for their Internet Explorer release that they were planning in 2005. Because again, this is all from 2005. What I got out of all of this is basically in the letter that Google was bitching to Microsoft, like, hey, you didn't give us enough time to really have our input on this agreement. And in this agreement, it's basically Microsoft being like, hey, you're going to start promoting us, and if you don't want to promote us, you've only got, I forgot the timeline they said, but like 2 weeks or a month or some shit like that to let us know. Otherwise, we're assuming you agree, or something like that, kind of. Like, but it wasn't like that, but it was basically like, you know, because you have to sign it to agree to it, otherwise it's not in effect. But they were basically like, this is what the deal is going to be unless you tell us otherwise in this time frame. You know what I mean? Is what they were saying. And then they were also, I forget the item numbers, but I felt like they were saying like certain item numbers they weren't willing to really negotiate on, but other item numbers they would. Let's see, like, let me control find that. Hold on. Okay, so they were saying with the exception, so like they're saying this, the term sheet is intended to enable the parties to discuss and arrive at the agreement. So this isn't the actual agreement. This is just a term sheet for them to use to negotiate what will be the agreement, right? But they're basically saying like, So we're just negotiating here. It's set for sections 1, 3, and 9 through 17. But yeah, I don't know. They're saying this, so they're saying, but except for these sections, none of these terms are not legally binding. But they are trying to claim that certain sections are going to be legally binding. You know what I mean? So I felt like they were basically kind of like, with this wording, my opinion, how I perceive it, is they're kind of like, we'll negotiate on certain shit except for this. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm like wrong for thinking that with how that went down. But yeah, so this is from 2005, and in 25 they're basically planning the release of Internet Explorer 7 and how were the different search options going to appear. And in 2005, that's when they first started really putting out their inline search bar across devices as well. And that is where we really started seeing a push in a cross-mobile society, in my opinion. Or in a cross-device society, in my opinion, would be like early 2000s to mid 2000s is where it really started to evolve and come out, you know? I don't know if I'm wrong for thinking that, because I guess we've always had multiple devices, you know, because we had pagers and we had cell phones before. But in terms of the marketing and the search capability on these devices, that really exploded early 2000s and mid 2000s, in my opinion. Am I using the right words? Anyway, we're going to do one more trial exhibit, and then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to wrap up and finish up with the Safety First Boutique case study and the How to Start a Startup lecture. So the next trial exhibit we're going to look at, so we've done 53, now we're on 54. This is trial exhibit number UPX0178. It's an email from Udi Manber, I am so sorry, I'm assuming I'm saying that wrong, of Google, to Hal Varian of Google regarding scale. And this is from August 2006, 2009. So this email was written in 2009. This document was filed for this case September 27, 2023. Okay, so, oh, thank God, it's a short one. So it's from Udi, on behalf of Udi. It was sent Wednesday, August 26, 2009. So I've been alarmed when I look at these timestamps, like who the fuck is working at 12:50 a.m.? But I'm wondering, because Google is an international company, could this be like a time difference thing, and how that is appearing on the device that they got this email from? Hopefully this guy isn't actually working at 1 a.m. But if he is, that fucking sucks. Anyway, and so the subject is regarding scale. Again, it's from Udi to Hal. I'm so sorry. I'm assuming I'm saying his name wrong. I feel bad. So it said, I was concerned with the original interview for CNET, and it has a link here. And it says, where, among other things, you said, quote, so in all of this stuff, the scale arguments are pretty bogus in our view, because it's not the quantity or quality of the ingredients that make a difference. It's the recipes. We think we're where we are today because we've got better recipes. And we have better recipes because we spent 10 years working on search, improving the performance of the algorithm. End quote. You specifically mentioned search improvements, and it's absolutely not true that scale is not important. We make very good use of everything we get. User interface experiments are done on a small percentage, but ranking is using a lot more. Udi. And I think this is interesting, back in 2005, that they were thinking about the impact of scale, right? And here in this email, the reason I believe that this was put as a trial exhibit was because Google was trying to argue that scale, their ability to scale, didn't have much of an impact on their ability to monopolize. But here, Google, the state is able to show this email to say, well, even Google's employees are admitting that their ability to scale is what's imperative for them to improve their performance. You know what I'm saying? And so Yeah, that's why this email is here. Isn't that great? Isn't that delightful? Okay, let's keep going. And on Tuesday, August 25th, 2009, at 5:43 p.m., Hal Varian of Google wrote, "Hey Udi, I hear you have some concerns about a statement attributed to me by Time magazine." Quote, Hal Varian, the company's chief economist, has pointed out that most search engines look at only a small sample of their data in order to improve their results. End quote. This is a garbled version of what I actually said. Here is what I actually said. Quote, most experiments with Google algorithms are initially run on small samples, 1% or less. As you tune your algorithms, you run on larger samples, and when all is working well, you deploy the improvement to the world at large. End quote. I can understand why you might think that, quote, most search engines look at only a small sample of their data in order to improve their results, end quote, is inaccurate. If you had submitted, quote, test or, end quote, or we can quote, experiment with, end quote, for improve, it would have been a more accurate report about what I actually said. This is how we do things in ads, using Rasta, and I have always understood that you do similar experimentation on small samples in search. If I'm wrong about this and you deploy at 100% levels from the beginning, please let me know. There's also another issue I wanted to mention about the term economies of scale as used in these discussions. Economists say that a technology exhibits increasing returns to scale if doubling its size more than doubles its quality. For example, Google is said to be twice as large as Yahoo in terms of queries served. Does this mean that Google has more than twice the quality of Yahoo? Or, to phrase the question differently, back in February 2007, Google queries were about half the volume they are now. Was Google's quality less than half as good as then as it is now? I would claim that Google's quality exhibits diminishing returns to scale. As you double output, quality increases, but by less than a factor of 2. Admittedly, I am being somewhat loose about how we're measuring quality, but that's the basic idea. Let me know if you think this makes sense. So basically, the one guy from Google, Udi, hit up the economist Hal, like in this quote, like, hey, you said, they quoted you as saying that scaling, that the quantity or the quality of a difference doesn't make a difference, that the quantity or quality of results don't make a difference, of what goes into the results don't make difference. It's the procedure, right? It's kind of like what he was trying to say, right? But where they quoted him as saying, working on search, improving the performance of the algorithm. So they're talking about, he's saying it's like not true that scale is not important. So right here, they're basically saying quantity or quality doesn't matter, is what Udi thought he was saying. Like scaling doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So Udi literally wrote Hal, like, you just said scaling doesn't matter, what the shit? And Hal's responding, I never said scaling doesn't matter. I meant that we scale slow. We don't just go from 0 to 100. There is a system to scaling. You know what I mean? Is what Hal was trying to respond back to saying. So this email, like, the state is really probably used this email to be like, look, they fucking admitted that they were like fucking basing their performance on scale. And previously it had been a debate in the court documents that we read before where Google was trying to argue like, yeah, we're not even really like scaling like that, you know what I mean? So we can't be a monopoly, right? Is what they were kind of trying to say. Or they're also trying to say that like their ability to scale the results had nothing to do with them monopolizing because other people had access to that information. But they left out at that point the exclusivity agreements in the revenue share agreements. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Anyway, So that kind of sums up, this is only 2 pages, so that's pretty quick. So we're going to sum up here what we've read so far with the court documents. We just checked out 2 trial exhibits today. We just read the email from Udi Manber of Google to Hal Varian of Google. I don't know Udi's title. I know that Hal is their chief economist. And they were talking about whether or not scaling was important. And I think that this is monumental in terms of this court case where they were trying to argue that their ability to scale hadn't really influenced whether or not they were a monopoly. But in this email, they literally admit that their ability to scale is crucial when it comes to their ability to perform. So yeah. And then this letter here from David to Brad, David of Google to Brad of Microsoft, they were basically saying like, we don't mind promoting you, but you didn't give us enough time to really go over this material, and we want to look at the way that you guys are releasing this system with Internet Explorer, because you have to fix this shit, because right now if people download this shit, we're not the fucking default, so you better make us the fucking default if you want to keep our money, bitch. Just kidding. That's not what they said. That's just what I got from it. But yeah. So next up, we're gonna cover Safety First Boutique, and then we're gonna cover the 8th lecture of how to get started with a startup or whatever. I'm gonna take a little quick breaky break, and then I'll be back. We're gonna keep going over this material. We're still doing the same break and post real outro music and visualizers I've been doing, but I did create a new one today. So in my next live stream, I'll try to get that. I gotta download it and everything, so I'll try to get that downloaded tomorrow. So I don't know if I'll do another live stream today or not, but tomorrow I'll probably start using that one. And yeah, all right, so I'm gonna take my break now. I'm gonna be right back, and then whenever I get back, we're gonna go over the Safety First Boutique thing, and then we're gonna do a reaction to the 8th lecture of how to start a startup playlist. So yeah, I'll be right back. that one person who stayed here while I went on break. I don't know who the fuck you are, but thanks. That's cool. No one ever does that. That's awesome. Anyway, so next up, we are about to get into the Safety First Boutique coverage. And fucking, am I on mute? No, I think I'm good. Okay. So next up, we're on the Safety First Boutique coverage. And I've covered this bitch a few times. Actually, I think more than a few times. I think I've covered her a good bit. And I had previously started because she had this sales strategy, and we covered one of her launches because I actually like literally waited till she did a launch to cover her once. And so we did a live stream where we literally watched her do her online store launches, where she used to have this strategy. She only put her products up for sale at certain points in time where she was ready to move a certain number of units at one time. Otherwise, her store would mostly be shut down in between. So she would go live, sell everything in one run, and then shut down until she was ready to launch back up again, was her previous strategy. And she would have people waiting for the countdown for her store launches from her social media marketing and everything like that too. And so we covered that previously, and that is what I really want to follow up on today. And also to recap some other previous coverage we've done of Safety First Boutique, she had talked a lot about Shark Tank. And so I did a few other videos on that as well, because it didn't make sense to me, because at first I thought she was like probably a genuinely interested, and maybe she was initially, in getting on Shark Tank as a way of growing her business. But then it became like the way she was talking about it and promoting it was against their terms for even being on the show. And so if you were realistically trying to be on the show, why would you go against the terms? So then I was like, I don't even think she's realistically trying to be on it anymore. I think she was using that concept for content, in my opinion, because of that. And so I'd also done some live streams on that as well. And I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that as a marketing strategy, but it's just like where it's either she's, either that is the marketing strategy, or she really was genuinely saying that shit but didn't realize that by trying to share her product with people involved in the show, and by promoting that she wanted to be on the show the way she was no longer qualifying to be on the show, because part of being on the show is you don't fucking tell anybody you're gonna fucking be on the goddamn show. You know what I mean? Until you're on it. I don't know. So, stuff like that. So, But anyway, okay, let me just share my screen. So, her website, I wanted to check into her because I was like kind of curious as to how her website was now. I was thinking maybe I would cover, actually when I first came to her website, I was like, let me cover another one of her launches perhaps. I was thinking maybe I would do that again and see like what additional commentary. I feel like I have bedhead. I don't know. Anyway, I'm sorry. My balding ass head and parting from this way is hard. Okay, so fucking, I'm distracted. I looked over and I see myself in the camera because I have two screens. So every now and then I'll be checking this one because I get like comment notifications over here if anyone does fucking show up and say anything. And I also get like notifications for other shit on my computer and what is happening with this live stream over here. And my main dashboard for this live stream is over here. So if I want to check in on the health of the stream, I look over here. But then like the content I'm discussing is right here. So I'm going back and forth. I'm out of it. I apologize. But I looked over there. I see myself. And I was like, oh, God, no. Anyway, we're here now. Fucking, so previously when you went to her store, where the fuck is the button at? I guess, is it that self-defense button? When you went to her store previously, it would have, like, you wouldn't even be able to view the store unless it was a time frame at which she had launched. So I'm wondering, like, did she like launch recently, was my first thought, right? And so I go to her Instagram. It usually will, like previously she would be putting on here, like if it was in a current launch. But yeah, so I think she moved that into her stories perhaps. So I think that what we're seeing right now is possibly the tail end of her last launch, but also it looks like she is slowing down. So it looks like she had a baby and she is slowing down on the way she does her business, which is cool because it's interesting that she's making that work for her in the way it needs to work. But yeah, right now there's like a handful, like a few keychains left that are her main ones, and then there's like a surprise thing, a mystery one that's discounted. You can get, um, but yeah, fucking that and like, so there's like basically 4 options left right now, and everything else is out of stock. And so at first I was curious, like, did she change her strategy? You know, like, is she just kind of leaving everything up and then posting what she can when she can now? Or did I catch her at the tail end of her fall restock? But oh, you know what? It's right here. I said that it usually says on here. I was looking at it, but I didn't process it. It was right here. Fall restock is live. So this is us catching the last of her last restock. So yeah, I wanted to just kind of like follow up on her and show like how this goes. I do think it's an interesting strategy because it is one that I have seen her do for like 5 years and it seems to be working for her, you know? Because even if who knows how many items there are of each one, but even if she sold one, that's 30 items right there at $40, right? So you know what I mean? Like, if you look at her marketing and her sales strategy, I do think it is something to consider. Lately, she was really leaning into the family content. Previously, her content was a blend of her relationships and her family life, but it was also a lot focused on showing her actually putting together the keychains, actually doing the restocks, as well as responding to common issues that happen, either customer service complaints, customer issues, or general questions from commenters online and things like that. So she'd be posting a lot of that. She uses a lot of exaggerated facial expressions in her marketing too, and I do think that it gets people to click, you know, because they want to see why are you reacting strongly if they've never seen you before. So I feel like there's a lot here to consider. I think she does use her kid a lot in her content, but at the same time, her kid isn't like the focus of her content, so that's nice because you do see that a lot. I think she's just making content out of anything with her life, you know, not good or bad. Everybody does that. Not like everybody, but the general everybody, anybody could. But you know, so like right here, it says when I woke up to this order note and it's got like a shocked expression. So that would be something that would be like something that people might want to click to see if it was a good thing or a bad thing that was said to her, for example, you know. So I feel like her marketing gets a lot of views and it gets a lot of engagement with the way she presents it. And yeah, so from that combination, in terms of like when you look at her marketing, the sales funnel, you know, she gets awareness, she gets their attention, so she moves them from awareness to consideration to decision by getting their attention, then getting their interest in the keychains, and then with the limitations of the stock, that kind of influences the desire aspect because they want it, but they have to wait to get it, and then that motivates the action as well. So I do think it is important, you know, to kind of like reflect and consider like what is a good marketing and sales strategy. And that's kind of why I wanted to pull this back up again. Like when you're looking at sustainability, she has, regardless of like my thoughts on the fact that she is a white bitch in Hawaii, you know, let's ignore that. The marketing to sales strategy itself, regardless of anything else of that background, it speaks for itself. It's working. And it has worked. I've seen her use this strategy, I believe, for like 5 years now. 4 or 5 years now. And it's been working for her. So if you want to look at long-term sustainability in the digital age, pay attention to what businesses you want to look like are doing that have actually stayed in business. You know what I mean? Um, because it's an interesting strategy. I would be very interested in watching or seeing other businesses implement this strategy as well. But yeah, that's up to you. You know, it's all about what you think. So yeah. So moving on, next up, what we're going to be looking at is doing a reaction here to Lecture 8, How to Get Started Doing Things That Don't Scale and Press. Now, I'm going to be watching this on double speed, so let's go ahead and put that on double speed. And if you want to watch it on regular speed, the regular video is linked in the description of this video without my commentary, just these guys, and go watch that there. And I'm about to play this on double speed and give my commentary on it. We're going to be watching Stanley Tang. He's the founder of Doordash, and he covers how to get started. Walker Williams is the founder of Teespring, covering doing things that don't scale. Justin Khan is founder of TwitchTV and Partner at Y Combinator. And Y Combinator, they changed their name to YC Root Access, and they're covering press. So yeah, we're going to get started now.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sam. I'm Stanley. I'm the founder of Doordash, and
sorry, I can't hear shit. I don't know if you guys can hear anything. I'm trying to turn my personal volume up. So I've got this volume all the way up. Let me see.
it's really amazing to be here because it wasn't actually that long ago where I sat in your seats. I was class of 2014, graduated in
Okay, I turned my computer volume up more.
CS, as well as my co-founder, Andy. And for those of you who don't know what Doordash is, we're building an on-demand delivery network for local cities. And I want to start off with this photo that I took just a few months ago. And I think this was the night when we just raised our Series A. And I took this photo as I was walking back to where I lived. I actually lived in Robley at the time on campus. And I took this photo because I realized just how ridiculous the combinations of things I was holding in my hand at the time. You know, I was holding my CS 247 homework. And then I had my tax forms since it was April and I had to fill out taxes. And then also that yellow speeding ticket. And then right below that was a $15 million piece of paper I just signed from Sequoia. And that kind of summarizes just how ridiculous our journey has been. You know, starting at Stanford, doing this while I was at Stanford, and then transitioning this into an actual startup. And I want to share that story with you today. It all began 2 years ago, actually, in a macaroon store. It was my junior year at Stanford. This was fall quarter, and at the time, I was really passionate about how you build technology for small business owners. And I sat down with Chloe, the owner of Chantal Guion, the macaroon store in Palo Alto at the time, just interviewing her, trying to get feedback on this prototype we've been working on, and also just learning about what her problems were in general. And it was during this meeting when Chloe first brought up this problem of delivery. I remember she took out this really, really thick booklet, and she showed me pages and pages of delivery orders. And a lot of these orders she had to turn down because there's no way she could have fulfilled them. She had no drivers, and she was the one who ended up having to personally deliver all these orders. And that was a very interesting moment for us. And then we, over the course of the next few weeks, we talked to around another 100.
I am very interested in watching like this guy who is the concept of Doordash, or was it Doordash? Is that the one? Yeah, because when he was doing this shit, like this is before there was Uber Eats and all of that, and the whole concept of being able to just order this on your phone and have somebody go do this shit for you, like in this way, like I don't know, to be the person that comes up with that. I wonder where he is at now. You know what I mean? Like, I find that fascinating.
150, 200 small business owners, and when we brought this idea of delivery, they kept agreeing with us, saying, yeah, this is a really big problem for us. We don't have delivery infrastructure. It's such a huge pain for us. There's not any good solutions out there, and which led us to wonder, delivery is such a common thing. It's such an obvious thing. Why hasn't anyone solved it before, right? Like we must be missing something here. So we thought maybe because people have tried this in the past, right? But it failed because there wasn't consumer demand for this. So we thought, okay, how can we test this hypothesis? We were just a bunch of college kids at the time. We didn't own trucks or delivery infrastructure or anything like that, right? We can't just spin up a delivery company overnight. So how can we test this assumption we had? So we decided to create a simple experiment with restaurant delivery. We spent about an afternoon just putting together a really quick landing page. And I went on the internet, I found some PDF menus of restaurants in Palo Alto, stuck it up there, and then had a phone number at the bottom, and which was our personal cell phone number, actually. And that was it. We put up the landing page. We called it paloaltodelivery.com. And this is actually what it looked like. Super, simple, ugly. Like, honestly, we weren't really expecting anything. We just launched it. And all we wanted to see was, would we get phone calls from this? And if we got enough phone calls, then maybe this delivery idea was something we're pursuing. So we put it up there. We weren't really expecting anything, and we were driving back home. And all of a sudden, we got a phone call. Someone called. They wanted to order Thai food, and we're like, oh wow, this is a real order. we have to do something about it, right? So, so we were in our cars, and we're like, okay, like, we're not doing anything right now. Might as well let's just swing by, Sign Royale, pick up some pad thai, and let's deliver it to this person, and let's try to learn how this whole delivery thing works. And we did. We delivered to this guy up in Alpine Road, I remember. He told us he was I was asking him, oh, how did you hear about us? What did he do? He told us he was a scholar. And then he handed me his business card and said he was the author of a book called Lead the People. And that was like our first ever delivery, right? It was like the best first delivery / worst delivery you could have asked for. We couldn't make this stuff up. And the next day we got, 2 more phone calls. The day after that we got 5, and then it became 7, and then it became 10. And then soon we started gaining traction on campus with PaloAltoDelivery.com, which was pretty crazy because think about it, right? This was a landing page. You had to look up PDF menus to place your order, and they had to call in. This isn't exactly the most professional looking site, yet people were still, we kept getting phone calls, we kept getting orders. And that's kind of when we knew we were onto something. When people are willing, like we knew we found this need people wanted, when people were willing to put up with all this. So I think another key point to remember is that we launched this in about
I was just thinking that, like, this is, typically you're advised you only want to have 3 touch points in your marketing to sales funnel, because the more touch points that you have, or the more obstacles you have to people being able to check out, the more likely they are to abandon the checkout journey. And so he's dead on with that. He's literally like, yeah, man, we just threw every obstacle out there we could. They still wanted this shit. So, and I think that speaks to what I was saying before, like, that's something that is very high demand to have thought about at this time. You know what I mean? Like, it's just mind-boggling to me that they were able to, well, think of a way to make that happen. But it's interesting also to see how it transitioned from this landing page to the app we know today, An
hour, right? Like we didn't spend, we didn't have any drivers, we didn't have any algorithms, we didn't spend, we have a backend. We didn't spend 6 months building like a fancy dispatch system. And we didn't have any of that. We just launched because at the beginning, none of that is necessary, right? At the beginning, it's all about testing your idea, trying to get this thing off the ground, and figuring out whether this was something people even wanted. And it's okay to hack things together at the beginning. At YC, there's a mantra we like to talk about is doing things that don't scale. So at the beginning, we were the delivery drivers. We would go to class, and then after class, we'd go deliver food. We were the customer support. Like I sometimes had to take phone calls during lecture. We spent afternoons just going down University Avenue passing out flyers about trying to promote Doordash. We didn't have any dispatch system, so what we had to do was, we used Square to charge all of our customers. We used Google Docs to keep track of our orders. We used Apple's Find My Friends to keep track of where all of our drivers were. Stuff like that. Just figuring out just hacking together solutions, just trying to get this thing off the ground. In fact, at one point we were growing so fast that Square actually shut our account down because we were under suspicion for money laundering. Think about it, we were getting small chunks of like $15, $20 orders coming in at a rapid pace. And luckily my co-founder Tony worked at Square, so he just emailed some buddies there, and everything was solved. Another thing about doing things that don't scale is that it also allows you to become an expert in your business, right? Like driving helped us understand how the whole delivery process worked. We used that as an opportunity to talk to our customers, talk to our restaurants. We did dispatching, which helped us figure out, how.
Okay, so he's talking about doing things that don't scale. So I'm realizing that they may be discussing these topics out of the order that they are listed on this description of the video. But also, like, I do think that's interesting how he's talking about, like, by doing things that don't scale to get started, you're able to really see who, like, if there is a high demand for what you're going to do and who is going to want that. You know what I mean? So I do think I am fascinated with that.
We manually dispatched every driver, and that helped us figure out, what our driver assignment algorithm should look like. We did customer support ourselves, getting real-time feedback from our customers. I remember, for the first few months when we got started, we would manually email every single one of our new customers, and at the end of every night, and just asking them, oh, how was your first delivery? How did you hear about us? And we would personalize all these emails, right? Like if I see someone order chicken skewers from Orange Hummus, I would say, oh, like I love Orange Hummus. How were your chicken skewers? How did your first delivery went? Just feedback like that was really valuable, and our customers really, really appreciated that. And I remember one time, this was during YC, we just came out of a meeting with one of our restaurant partners, and we heard about this ice cream store that just opened up on University Avenue called Cream, and wanted to go try it out. And then all of a sudden, our co-founder back at our office/house texted us saying, oh, we need drivers on the road. We got a huge spike in demand. So we debated for maybe 10 seconds, like, should we go get ice cream or should we go deliver? Obviously, we went and delivered, but that kind of became our motivation on scaling, right? Like if we can scale, then you can go get ice cream next time. So yeah, I think that kind of, and then now of course we scaled across different cities. Now you have to worry about building automated solutions and dispatch systems and figuring out how you match demand and supply and all that fancy technology stuff. But none of that matters at the beginning, because at the beginning it's all about getting this thing off the ground and trying to find product market fit. So just to summarize. So the 3 things I would say that I learned from doing Doordash is, first, test your hypothesis. You want to treat your startup ideas like experiments. The second thing is launch fast. We launched in less than an hour with a really simple landing page. And finally, it's okay to do things that don't scale. Doing things that don't scale is one of your biggest competitive advantages when you're starting out. And you can figure out how to scale once you have the demand. And maybe.
So I do think it's interesting how he is telling people to launch fast. And to a point, I agree that, like, at a certain level, you should kind of get into a habit of just doing things quickly, just fucking get it done in business. Because otherwise, if you spend too long trying to make things perfect, it really delays things that could have been done a lot faster and a lot earlier that you could have, but on another level, I feel like sometimes anytime I see businesses start making a lot of mistakes, I feel it's because they're trying to do too much too fast. And when you are going too fast and you don't know when to prioritize and slow down, that's when you end up doing things that can actually fuck your business up. You know what I mean? And I'm talking about, like for example, I've recently been calling out a law firm, and that law firm, I feel this could apply to them because they were more focused on scaling than on treating their employees correctly. And, you know, they were more worried about a rapid pace of scaling quickly to other locations than gradually expanding in a sustainable way where their workers are going to be able to manage that workload and where people are being treated well. Things like that, right? So, but then again, at the same time, you can spend a day on a flyer, you can spend a week on a flyer, or you can spend a month on making a flyer perfect. So when it comes to certain decisions, yeah, go ahead and fucking get that shit done. What color the flyer is really doesn't matter. That can be a fast task. But also, you have to know what not to do too fast, too, in my opinion. But yeah.
Maybe once you've scaled, then you can go get that ice cream. Thanks. Sure.
How did your first customers hear about it?
Yeah, so the question was, how did our first customer hear about us? Our very first one, I have no idea. We just launched PaulToDelivery.com. We didn't do any marketing, so I assumed he just must have typed in PaulToDelivery into the web browser. But then after that, we did barely any marketing. I think I sent out like one email to my dorm, and that was about it. It was all through word of mouth, and that kind of just validates, just how strong the need you found. When people just start talking about you, and they're willing to put up with all this, terrible user experience, terrible design, and stuff like that.
When you started, it seems so obvious to you. You're wondering why no one's done this. What's your answer now, looking back?
Yeah, looking back, I think the biggest thing is mobile. The fact that now everyone has one of those in their pocket, and we kind of saw that trend and thought, what if you can design, a delivery system that was entirely based off mobile, where you didn't have to have an infrastructure or delivery fleets. Instead, you could, instead of hiring drivers full-time, purchasing vehicles, what if you can tap into a more on-demand pool of independent contractors and only send orders to them when they have time. So that's kind of the insight we had. Everything was done through mobile. Yeah.
Did you know you were going to be a startup, or were you just making some money?
Yeah, at the time we were all really passionate about building technology for small business owners, and honestly, this delivery thing came out of an experiment, right, with a landing page. Like, it was literally an experiment. We weren't expecting anything, and it just took off, and we went with it. And logistics was always something we were really passionate about as well. Like logistics, transportation, and it's kind of the perfect fusion of, how do you help small business owners through delivery. Back to.
Do you launch the mobile app first or the website? And how long did it take from idea to the first launch?
Yeah, we started with this landing page right here. Took us an hour to launch.
How does DoorDash stand out in the space built with Postmates and Seamless and other companies?
Yeah. The question was, how does DoorDash stand out among a very competitive space? I mean, at the beginning, for us, consumer demand has never been the problem, even up until now. So for us, it's just about finding a need and just focusing on serving that demand. So at the beginning, competition doesn't really matter when you're getting started.
Why did you take over into a company after first delivery?
Yeah, the question was how long it took for us to incorporate into a company when we went through YC. So we launched in January 2013, and then we did YC that very summer. And when we decided to take this idea through YC, we incorporated it. One more? Yeah, you.
What do you plan to do next, or where do you plan to go with this besides food delivery?
Yeah, the question was, where do we plan to go beyond food delivery? For us, when we started DoorDash, it was always, like I said, about helping small business owners and figuring out, how do you serve this for any local merchant, whether you're a macaroon store, a restaurant, or a furniture shop. That's still our.
It's actually really cool to see him talk about wanting to do the things in the past that this company actually ended up doing now. Because this video was published like 10 years ago, and that's the whole fucking reason I'm even watching it now. It was published in 2014, and that's how I started watching these videos. Was I had seen them around 2016 when I had graduated college, and I wanted to rewatch them now to see how do I feel about these videos in my current mindset. And I remember at the time I watched them, I was really watching all of this shit, like really excited about a lot of the new information I was getting, but I also had a lot of social critiques. And in other videos, you can go watch them to see my social critiques in those videos. But this one, I haven't had one so far. But I feel like it's just with a different mindset, and this is a different person. So I don't have a critique about every person that I've seen, or everything they've said either. But anyway, So that's why we got started rewatching this, because I wanted to see how I have shifted. But it's also interesting to watch this and see how this company has shifted, knowing where they were then at the time he was saying all of these things, you know? Where at that time they were only on food distribution, to my understanding, primarily. And they were in convenience stores too, but they hadn't really escalated to where they are now, to where the amount of people use them that use them today. And so I do think it's awesome to see the way he has expanded, you know? So yeah, we're gonna keep going.
Our focus, that's like a long-term vision. For now, we're just focused on restaurant delivery as a way to scale, but ultimately that's where we want to end up in. Thanks. Okay, next is Walker Williams from Teespring. Teespring YC. I almost rejected them. That's not a good idea, but now they're doing $100 million a year revenue, so very lucky. And most of them talk also about doing things on scale.
All right, thank you guys for having me. My name is Walker. I'm the CEO and founder of Teespring. For those of you guys who don't know what Teespring is, we're an e-commerce platform that allows entrepreneurs to launch products and apparel brands without risk, cost, or compromise. Today, the company is about 180 folks, and we ship tens of.
Okay, that's interesting because I didn't know what they were at all. And for myself, I do use I use Printful, and they are a program where you don't actually have to own any of it. It's not necessarily the same as drop shipping, but it is print on demand. And so it's similar to drop shipping, because what the difference is, the drop shipping is you're using other people's shit or whatever, or it's like with white labeling, you're using other people's shit and reselling it, right? But with print on demand, it's got the benefits of that because you don't actually have to own or house or deal with your inventory or make the shit, but you are actually able to use your own designs and everything like that. So you are able to make your own shit in that way, and they will do it all for you. So I do think it's interesting, you know, to see like where these types of programs, how they were like evolving 10 years ago, even though it's a whole different company. You know what I mean? Like, what are the trends in this market? So yeah.
Thousands of products each day. And I want to talk to you about one of the most fundamental advantages you have as a startup, and that's that you're able to do things that don't scale. And I define things that don't scale as things that are sort of fundamentally unsustainable. They will not last. They will not bring in the millionth user. And where they break, it's usually time, but it could be a number of other things. But it's really growth strategies that won't take you to 1 million users. And there's 3 real places I want to focus on today. The first one is finding your first users. The second one is turning those users into champions. And the third one is finding your product and market fit. So finding your first users. The first thing you have to understand is that there is no silver bullet for user acquisition. Everybody, and this includes me when we got started, you look for that dream solution, that pay-per-click campaign that has tremendous ROI, some accelerating partnership that's going to springboard you into the stratosphere, an affiliate agreement, something that solves it for you. But the reality is, for the vast majority of companies, and in fact for every company that I've had the chance to speak to the CEO of, that's just not possible. Those are unicorns, and most of the companies that from the outside look like they've had this dream growth curve, the reality is that those first users were impossibly hard to get. And let me tell you about the story of a ridiculously unsustainable business. So this is Teespring in 2012. When we first launched, the business couldn't have looked worse. It took days of meetings. We had to offer free design, days of revisions back and forth. We'd have to launch the product ourselves. We'd have to do the social media, all to sell like 50 shirts for a local nonprofit and generate $1,000 of revenue. Anybody looking in would have said, you guys need to give up. This is a terrible idea. But as time went on, those users start to add up. And I think something you have to understand is that when you first launch a company, just by virtue of the fact that it's a new product, you're going to be bad at selling it, right? You've got no idea what the pain points of customers really are. You've never sold it before. You don't have any success stories to point to or testimonials. Those first users are always going to be the hardest. And so it's your responsibility as a founder to do whatever it takes to bring in your first users. And it's going to be different for every company. The common thread that I hear is founders need to spend personal time and effort, a lot of their personal time and effort, to bring those users in themselves. It can mean a number of things, everything from sending 100 emails a day, getting on the phone and just calling as many people as you can, going through a network if you have a network like Stanford or Y Combinator, anything you can do to get that.
So I do think this is a good point where it comes to expressing, like having to put a lot of effort in and a lot of thought in and a lot of different strategies into getting those first customers in before you grow and you have the money to run other ads, a lot of people, when they come to me and they don't have that budget to run other ads, they want to pay me to just do their regular marketing routine for them. And I tell them that's not a good use of their resources. Go ahead and pay somebody else to do that much cheaper, and then pay me when you're ready to do your ads, because I won't be able to get you much more different results than what you're currently getting if we're just doing the same thing, which is just creating social media posts and posting those organically, no matter what that content is. You know what I mean? Like, there's always going to be ways you can improve any content, so no matter what, blah blah blah. But in terms of like actually growing your revenue, if you want to scale, hiring somebody to post organically will not grow you much more business than you are currently getting yourself right now, in my opinion. Unless you are hiring somebody who is a celebrity or something that's already going to have that natural audience come with them by way of using their presence, you know, something like that. And so to that point, a lot of people, they actually have a lot more leads and a lot more customers than they realize, because you know, there'll be people with only 100 or 200 followers on Facebook or something, but over the course of 10 years or 5-10 years, they'll be having hundreds of people watch their content, and at least dozens of them commenting to them and things like that, but they don't respond, or if they respond, it's just a like, you know, or things like that. Like, actually engaging with the people who engage with you in a way to nurture that relationship is what will help you grow your business. And that is work that a lot of people don't do because they don't know how to do it. Some people just don't know how to do it, and so they were never taught to do that, and so they never utilize the engagement they got, and they could be getting more sales with the engagement they have without necessarily doing more ads. You know what I mean? And then a lot of people, they'll already have a database of contact lists, but they're not calling them ever. They're not emailing them ever. They don't nurture the contacts that they already have. I'm not speaking right. Read my mind. So, you know, get on your email marketing. Call these bitches. Say what's up, motherfucker. Like, I'm trying not to say that right anymore. Say what's up, bitch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, shit. You know, fuck. Engage with the people that are interacting with you. A lot of people don't do that. And depending on your market, and depending on where you are, there are various laws regarding consent and access to people's information. So there is different strategies out there relating to marketing when it comes to that. That's a whole different conversation. I don't want to get onto that because blah blah blah. I'm someone who does personally focus on consensual sales and permission marketing, and so I'm going to be somebody who I typically go for getting the permission. And the reason being is not only is consent very important to me, but also almost every company, there are exceptions. For example, law offices who only deal with one territory, for example, right? But in a lot of cases, even if somebody has a brick and mortar location in one spot, they're still trying to serve anybody that will buy from them, and that could be international. In their website, they could be having international or national buyers. And because these laws vary nation by nation and state by state, the best way to cover your ass with any potential buyer is to go by the laws that are the strictest. So therefore, you're always compliant. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I personally do, because it really just, you don't have to put that effort into thinking about, oh, what strategy am I going to do for each individual fucking state and country that I want to advertise in. Fuck all of that. Now you're going from one marketing plan to like hundreds, depending on what you want to do. You know what I mean? No, none of that. So, sorry for this ramble, or you're welcome. And let's keep going.
That first user, and I really equate it to pushing a boulder up a hill. And if you think of like a very sort of smooth hill, when you get started, the incline is the steepest, and those first inches are the hardest. And over time, as you get farther and farther, the incline stays out, it gets easier, and hopefully, eventually, you reach a point where you're at the top of the hill, and the boulder starts to roll on its own. And so those first users, you just cannot focus on ROI in the sense of time. Do not expect to spend an hour and return thousands of dollars. Maybe Stanley is one of those unicorns. That was a pretty incredible story. But for most of us, those first users are going to take a lot of hand-holding, a lot of personal love, and that's okay. That's essential for building a company. And the one sort of caveat of that is that I don't recommend giving away your product for free. And there's plenty of exceptions to this rule, but in general, cutting costs or giving a product away is an unsustainable strategy. I wouldn't recommend. You need to.
And you know what? This is a great point. I wish people, like in college, people teach you go work for free and take less money than you deserve, because otherwise you won't be able to build a portfolio, and then you won't be able to get a gig at all in the industry unless you already are nepotized in and you have those connections already, right? But I think that's terrible advice, because my mental health went into the shitter. Every time I see somebody who stands on their own, they're like, nah, bitch, you can pay me. I love that. I support that, because they still deserve the same fucking wage. And as you can't train somebody, then you don't know what the fuck you're doing either. So, like, what the fuck you mean you're gonna go try and undercharge somebody? Like, what? I don't know. So, yeah, I like this message. I support it 100%. Anyway, you know what I mean? I feel like I'm not expressing complete ideas, but I'm still expecting you to read my mind.
To make sure that users value your product, and people have a different. They treat products that are free in a much different way than a paid product, and oftentimes it can give you a false sense of security of, oh, we're getting all these users, surely we can convert them over to paid. The second aspect is what happens when you get those users? How do you turn those users into champions? And a champion is a user who talks about and advocates for your product. And I'm a firm believer that every company with a great growth strategy has users who are champions. And so really the easiest way to turn a user into a champion is to delight them with an experience they're going to remember. So something that's unusual or out of the ordinary, an exceptional experience. And the easiest way to do this early, and again, something that is completely unsustainable, it's not going to scale forever, is to just talk to those users. And people will say this all the time. You hear it's one of the sort of core tenets of Y Combinator is talk to users. But I cannot stress how important it is that you spend a large chunk of your time talking to users. And you should do it.
Okay, I'm back on this law office situation again, right? Because I felt like one of the problems I had there was, like, they didn't really like listening to input from other people in marketing, They'd be like, oh, it's not their job to have any input. And I'd be like, okay, at one point, I get to a certain level in society, we all have our own jobs, and you can't go be around telling everybody how to do their fucking job, right? Like, I get that, right? But on another level, part of doing your job is serving other people. So why wouldn't you want to know how your market perceives you, or what your market expects of you, right? Like, why wouldn't you want to know that, or what people in your field or industry expect? So when I was working at that one law office, like, on my first few days, they just had me like go around and talk to these, and it was like an agenda given to me where I was scheduled to meet with people or in the office to get to know them, to get to know the systems and routines and how everything worked there. And different people were giving me ideas on how they would like the marketing messages to change for that law firm, and I really liked the things that they were saying. So I wrote that shit down and I sent it to the CMO and I sent it to the managing partner, and they were like, well, it's not their job to have any input. And I was just like, you're missing the message entirely. But now they're using a lot of those ideas I sent, which I think is interesting. So maybe they came around after all. But a lot of the ideas, they were focused on a messaging that went from centering the lawyer to more focused on serving the community. That was the suggestion given, basically. And I thought it was an amazing suggestion because people wanted to focus on the care provided, and the holistic approach of, we are here to support you. And I thought that was a great message to put out there. And yeah, anyway, so that's what that reminded me of. And so I feel like a lot of times when you're in a situation, and then now I'm at a whole different place, right, where I work for a corporation. And I work with different regional directors of this corporation. I sell franchise units to possible franchise owners. And so one of our regional directors, he works in 2 regions, and he doesn't have a staff at all in one region. And so I was like struggling to get people on his calendar in this region that he doesn't have a staff in. And every time I put somebody on the calendar, on days on the calendar, he says to book there. He says to reschedule, he's unavailable, blah, blah, blah. And so I was one day like, we should possibly consider like maybe waiting until we get a staff in the office to schedule meetings with leads there, because we reschedule every single one of them and it looks really bad for us. And I had already tried clarifying what days, and I put on my calendar the days he said to do it. He does not block off his calendar when he's unavailable, no matter how many times I beg him. I say, look, just block off your calendar. If you're not free, I won't book you. He doesn't block it off. And so all I said was, let's just consider like waiting to book people until we can get a staff in. And he responds like that I needed to watch my fucking attitude, that I needed to not tell him how to run his office, and then he calls my manager and tells my manager, I don't know what I'm doing. And I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? And so I was literally like, you always have to deal with people's egos, right? And then people, they're more focused on feeling like they're in control than actually doing good work in a lot of situations. And I don't like that. Like, on another level, I do agree that you should respect everybody's role. Everybody's authority over a situation does have respect to honor to it. And, and I do respect, like, the position of the purpose of a chain of command to provide direction and instruction and to move a goal forward. I do believe in all that good shit when it's used in a good way. But I don't just follow orders without thinking about the impact, because otherwise that's how you all get legally implicated into legal consequences and things like that, Anyway, that's a long ass ramble. I apologize. It's a spiral of life. Okay, so we're gonna keep watching.
Constantly, every single day, and as long as possible. Today at Teespring, I'm still the catch-all email address, so anytime somebody misspells support or writes an email address that doesn't exist, I get that email. And so I still do about 12 to 20 customer service tickets every single day. I spend hours each night reading every single tweet, probably a little bit OCD, but that's okay. I read through all the Teespring communities. You're never going to get a better sense for your product than actually listening to real users. And especially in the early days, the product you launch with and the feature set you launch with is almost certainly not going to be the feature set that you scale with. And the quicker you talk to users and learn what they actually need, the faster you can get to that point. So there's 3 ways to talk to your customers. You can run customer service yourself. Up until Teespring was doing about $130,000, $140,000 a month. My co-founder Evan and I did everything in customer service. This is one that there's going to be an instinct to quickly pass off, and that's because it's painful. Even today, when I open our customer service portal, I have like an emotional reaction where my stomach sinks, because it sucks talking to users who have had a terrible experience, and it's painful. It's something that you love and you put so much effort into, and you've gotten it wrong, or they've had a terrible experience, or somebody didn't treat them right. But it's so important that you go through that and learn what you need to build, what you need to fix. The second step is to proactively reach out to current and churn customers, and churn customers are customers who have left. And this is one that often falls by the wayside in sort of the pursuit of new customers. But you want to make sure that your customers are having a consistent, good experience. You don't want to just leave those current users as you don't want to take them for granted. And then when a user actually leaves your service, you want to reach out and find out why. Both because that personal outreach can make the difference between leaving and staying. Sometimes people just need to know that you care and it's going to get better. And because even if you can't bring them back, there's a chance that you can learn from the mistake you made that caused them to leave and fix it so you don't churn users out the same way in the future. And the final one is, again, the one that I'm probably too OCD about, but it's social media and communities. You need to know how people are talking about your brand. You need to reach out and make sure that when somebody does have a bad experience and they're talking about it, that you make it right. Problems are inevitable in startups. There's going to be issues. You're not going to have the perfect product. Things are going to break. Things are going to go wrong. That's not important. What's important is to always make it right, to always go the extra mile and make that customer happy. One detractor who's had a terrible experience on your platform is enough to reverse the progress of 10 champions. It's all it takes is one person out there to say, no, you shouldn't use those guys for X, Y, and Z reason, to ruin a ton of momentum. So even if it's, there's examples in the early days where we would mess up massive orders. We'd print the color slightly.
I will say yes and no to that, right? Because depending on the concept, yes, it is possible for you to lose deals based on your behavior. But at the same time, cancel culture in some ways isn't real either, though, because no matter how shitty you are, there is always going to be a market for it. And so even the worst of the scumbags of the earth are still millionaires and billionaires, and people go flock to buy their shit, because there's always going to be a market that agrees with you no matter who you are or what you do, you know what I mean? So to a certain point, there can be damages and harm to your reputation and your income, always temporarily, no matter what, because the current situation and way that you have your business built can always change at any moment. But another level, you can always rebuild. And there's always going to be people out there that do support you. And so there's never like a complete cancel culture either. Like, yeah, there might be harm to your ability to perform, but there won't ever be stopping you. You know what I mean? Unless you're fucking dead. In my opinion. I think. In my opinion. All right, let's keep going.
Slightly wrong, it would be the wrong size, and it would be like half of our GMV for that month. And we would know we got it wrong, the customer would be unhappy, and sort of this instinct is, well, it's only a little bit off, or it's not completely wrong, it'll be fine. But the reality is you just gotta bite the bullet and make sure that it's right. And those customers, the customers that are often originally the most frustrated, tend to turn into the biggest champions and the longest term users. And the last one I want to talk about is finding product and market fit. And what I mean by that is that, I mentioned this earlier, but the product you launch with will almost certainly not be the product that takes you to scale. And so your job in those early moments, in those early days of a startup, is to progress and iterate as fast as possible to reach that product that does have market fit. And as engineers, your instinct is going to be to build a platform with beautiful, clean code that scales, right? You don't want to write sort of duct tape code that's going to pile on technical debt, but you need to optimize for speed over scalability and clean code. And sort of an example of this is in the early days, we had a couple enterprise customers come to us, sort of bigger nonprofits, and say, hey, we really like your service, but you're missing these fundamental things, so we're not going to use it. And we looked at sort of what it would take to build out those features, and we weren't sure they were going to work long term, but we wanted to try it. And my co-founder Evan, who is our CTO and a million times better developer than I am, sort of ran the math and figured out that if we did it the right way, it was going to take about a month to build out these features. And in a startup, a month, you live in dog years, a month is a year, and that just wasn't going to do. So he actually went out, duplicated the code base, duplicated the database, and was able to basically build a completely different product that he didn't have to worry about the existing users for to serve these enterprise customers. We gave them the tool, they onboarded, they generated a lot of revenue. Eventually, we learned what features were core, and we integrated them into the core product. But what would have taken a month, we were able to do in 3 to 4 days. A great rule of thumb is to only worry about the next order of magnitude. So when you have your 10th user, you shouldn't be wondering, well, how are we going to serve 1 million users? You should be worried about how are we going to get to 100. When you're at 100, you should think about 1,000. It's one of those things where necessity is the mother of invention, of all invention. So when you hit that breaking point, like the Twitter fail whale is a great example. And Teespring, there were month stretches where every single night the site would crash, every night, and during the day. And every single person on the team would go to sleep with their phone on loud under their pillow, so that inevitably when the buzzer went off, we could quickly get up, restart the servers, and go back to sleep. And this would happen daily. But the reality is that it was worth it. And you'll end up with these huge pain points and all this technical debt and regret. But it's worth it just to get to that end goal and that product fit faster. You will make it work. You will survive. Those sort of bumps are just speed bumps, and speed is so important early. So the lesson that I've been learning lately is you want to do these things that don't scale as long as possible. There's not some magical moment. It's not the Series A. It's not when you hit a certain revenue milestone that you stop doing things that don't scale. This is one of your biggest advantages as a company. And the moment you give it up, you're giving your competitors that are smaller that can still do these things that advantage over you. So as long as humanly possible, as long as it is a net positive, you need to be spending time talking to your users. You need to move fast in development as fast as possible, but don't give it up willingly. It should be ripped from you. And so sort of trying to practice what I preach, I want to give you guys my email address. If you guys have any questions, if you want to learn about Teespring, if you want to print some t-shirts, fingers crossed, just shoot me an email. I'd love to help and I'd love to speak to you. And the last thing is we've created an official How to Start a Startup Tee with Sam, and all proceeds are going to WotC. I couldn't miss this opportunity to sell.
So yeah, I really do like the lectures in this video that we've watched so far. And this one, I really appreciate the realistic advice he gave. There are things that I feel like I feel like any lecture you give, there's always going to be more you could add on to it, or someone's going to have their own perspective of what they wish was said. So for me, I just wish there was more of like this warning of some of the limitations of the spectrum of these concepts in terms of, everything in moderation, including moderation. But like at the same time, I really do agree with basically everything he's kind of said. You know what I mean? So yeah.
So if you guys want to grab one of the official tees, just go to teespring.com/startup, and it's supporting a great cause. Thank you. Sure. Go ahead. Yep.
The t-shirt printing business, it seems like it has a lot of content. So what convinced you to think this is a viable market?
Sure. So the question was, the t-shirt printing business has a lot of competition. What would convince us to get into the market? I think there's 2 factors to it. So first, I completely agree. From the outside, people have been telling us that this is a silly idea since day one, and sort of at every order of magnitude we reach, people will come and say, hey, that's a terrible, terrible idea. Why are you doing that? But the reason that we launched Teespring is because we ran into a personal pain.
And this is why you shouldn't fucking listen to people, because how the fuck would people think this is a terrible idea? Because a similar concept to this, as I mentioned before with Printful, is literally how I have my online store now, and how I know a lot of people are basing their e-commerce currently today. And so I think it's interesting, right? Because people were telling him it's a stupid idea, but those are people who would never have a use for building their own business to capitalize off of creating their own merchandise, right? So why would somebody who doesn't want to make their own shit think that's a good idea to do? This is why you shouldn't listen to everybody, because to a point, yeah, you should understand the market of what you're going to try to sell to, but at another point, not everybody's going to be able to execute or see your vision, and if they can't see it for themselves, they won't be able to see it for you either. You know what I mean? Like, who the fuck would think this is a stupid idea?
Pain point where we had a need and we looked at the current solutions. I was a student at Brown and I was trying to create a Remember the Bar shirt for a dive bar that got shut down, and I realized that nothing matched my needs. And so because I knew that I had that pain point and I knew there was market fit and I had seen people adopt the product, I knew there was something there. And it was also one of those things where you can sort of feel the wind on your back, where people are adopting the product quickly. The pain point is clearly there. It's not a met need. So I would say that oftentimes great ideas start by looking like silly ideas, and then you can sort of feel out whether or not there's a scalable business here by how people are adopting it. Is it possible to bring customers aboard? Sure.
Are nonprofits your biggest customer base? Like,
No, today our biggest customer base are entrepreneurs who are trying to build brands and businesses. We have a little over 1,000 people that make their full-time living on Teespring today via brands they've launched. And the other side is influencers, so YouTube stars, Reddit communities, bloggers who want to add product, merchandise as a way to sort of create a brand and monetize that affinity. So those are our two biggest markets. We still do work with a lot of nonprofits and love working with them. It's still a part of our business, just not the majority.
thank you.
Yeah.
Founder of Kiko, and then Justin TV, which is Twitch, and now president of Combinator, and it's going to talk about PR.
Now I'm extremely fascinated to see the founder of Twitch, what he's going to be saying here, because Twitch is still an extremely large platform today. And the monetization capabilities of Twitch and the way people are able to sustain themselves from it is incredible. So I'm really fascinated by the system he built, and I'm interested to see what he's going to say now.
Cool. Well, while I wait for the slide to happen, I started a bunch of startups, but I think you've heard a lot of awesome, kind of how did I get started stories. So I'm going to talk about something very specific that people always have questions with, which is press and like how do you get it, how does it work. It's something. This is kind of like an abridged version of what we talk about at Y Combinator, and hopefully you guys will find it helpful. So a lot of people, I think, when they first get started with entrepreneurship, think about getting press and being in the press as something that happens magically. They think about it as like something that journalists are like out there like trying to find the best stories and really like discover like it's like a meritocracy, which is like absolutely not the case. So before you think about press, one of the things you really want to think about is who you want to reach and like what's your actual goal, right? A lot of people, like I know when I got started, I wanted to just be in the news because I thought that's what Likely did as an important company. And it turns out if you don't have any goals, you're not going to achieve them, right? I mean, that's true of like pretty much everything. And with press, if you just like aimlessly want to be covered, it's not really going to do anything for your startup. So getting like in the news is nice because you can send it to your mom and say, hey, I have a real job. Look, we're in the New York Times. But if you don't have an actual goal for your like a business goal with it, it's really just like not a good use of time. So there's many different goals. One example is you might want to with Social Cam, which was a spinoff of Justin TV. It was like an app that was kind of like video Instagram, and our goal was really to be known as like a video like Instagram app, and like we thought of in that context when it was time to pitch our like Silicon Valley investors and influencers, and so we really wanted to get in like tech press and kind of be positioned as this like new hot social app. With Exec, one of my goals was the second, like to get customers. So Exec was like a local cleaning service, and our goal was to get people in San Francisco to use it. It wasn't like useful to get national press because 99% of those people can use it. So we really targeted initially a lot of like SF Chronicle and like local San Francisco press that would directly talk to people who could potentially use our app. For Twitch, which is probably the thing that you guys mostly know, it was Twitch was like ESPN for gaming, or kind of like a live streaming community of gamers. And our goal was to, with press, was like to reach the gaming industry. Because like when we started now, it's like 55 million uniques, and like people in the gaming industry know about it. But when we started, nobody really knew that like it was a place to advertise, and like it wasn't like known as like a we were a very nascent small gaming community. And our goal was to like get people in the gaming industry, whether they were developers or advertisers, to think about us as like an important.
See, this shows how little I actually know about Twitch, right? Because I obviously knew that people streamed their gaming on Twitch, but I didn't really realize that they started solely for the purpose of gaming, because my interaction and experience with Twitch is just live streaming in general and watching streamers in general. And so understanding this origin and focus of it is helping me understand like how the way it grew in the community it has, right? Because gamers really do move as a community, and so to have that platform originally built and enabled into the game, now I see it. But that's also interesting, right, to do with intention to build a platform and to say, okay, I'm going to build it into this gaming community where there's already this large audience, already this fan base, like here we go, here we have this market. And what that does, I think, is it really gives you people to advertise to that are going to have a need for your product. And yeah, I don't know. I'm really interested in that. I need to process that more.
Place where like influencers were. So we really targeted industry trades and game dev blogs and places where like gamers, GamesBeat, stuff like that the industry was reading. So what's an actual story? I think there's there's a bunch of different types of stories, but these are usually the ones that you see in startups. Those are like product launches, like you just launch a new version of your app. There's fundraising for whatever reason. Press loves to write about fundraising, even though it's not very interesting. So like if you raise $1 million seed round, pretty much you can get that covered. Milestones or metrics, like you've achieved $1 million a week in revenue. That's one of our
and I also think his concept of what is a story with press release can also tie into the purpose of why you're writing the press release, because that's going to determine where the story can go, besides just acknowledging what the fuck happened. Because, well, you know what? That's it. So where the story's going to go is going to be based on reality, right? Because you can only write in reality. Otherwise, the truth always comes out. But when it comes to what you're going to write, what story you pick, where is that going to go? That is related to intention. So for example, one press release campaign I did, I had a client going viral for looking like a celebrity, but no one cared about the fact that he was a fucking musician. So we did a press release to get him to connect the fact, so when people looked for him as that celebrity lookalike, they would find, oh, he's a musician. So we did a press release talking about his music, being like, oh, this celebrity lookalike makes music too. But I didn't word it like that, he makes music that is very I forgot what he calls it, but it's like very seductive. So I talk about like how this sultry artist, who happens to be a celebrity lookalike, makes seductive music as well. And so using that type of wording kind of allures people, brings them into it. And so sex, drugs, and rock and roll, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's gotta get some attention. Um, Fucking things like that. You can kind of think about, like, what is your goal with your press release? That's going to determine which story you choose to tell in association with what gets published. So, yeah.
The company that bought Exec just announced that they achieved $1 million a week in revenue and was covered pretty widely. Like business stories, which generally happen when you're like already a successful company, someone like a New York Times or New Yorker Business Magazine will like want to cover like kind of the story of your startup. Usually don't have to worry about that in the beginning. What I like to call stunts, which are like, I don't know if you guys remember, but a couple years ago, this YC company called WePay dropped a block of ice with money frozen in it outside of the PayPal, like a PayPal developers conference, because like PayPal was like in the news for freezing, like various developers accounts. And so that was like widely covered because it was just so kind of an interesting thing, and it really it got them in the story, right? They wouldn't have been talked about in the context of PayPal at all, really. Hiring announcements. If you're a big enough company and you hire someone really important, people want to cover that. And then contributed articles like you writing some sort of industry overview or some opinion piece in like maybe a tech blog or stuff like that. So those are like, basically any of those things can be stories. One of the things that people usually don't think about is that you really have to think about like everything. When you start a startup, you think that everything you're doing is interesting, but that's not true for like other people, right? Like what you really need to think about is like objectively, if I wasn't the founder of this company, would I want to like read a story about what I'm pitching, right? So your incremental feature release or 2.01 feature release might not be interesting if, like just because you added like a find your contacts in Facebook or something. Like you really want to take a step back before you invest the time in like actually trying to pitch a story and think, will anyone actually want to read this? Because what people are.
And also, the audience of your story will also determine where you want to be published. So when you think about who you're writing to, that's not only going to determine what story you decide to tell, but where you decide to tell that story to.
Journalists and bloggers are looking for is things that people actually want to read, right? The other thing is like you don't actually have to be very original. Your press and news doesn't have to be original. You just have to be like what I like to call original enough, right? So you don't want to be the second cooler company to raise $5 million on Kickstarter, right? That's like the first guy gets like all the news. But like if you're the I think the first video game console to raise $10 million on Kickstarter, like Ouya was, that was like they raised like $1 million in 24 hours. That was like huge news because they were kind of like the first in that category, right? Even though other people had raised a lot of money on Kickstarter before. So just like think about your stories in the context of like where they are and like what else has been written about, and if they're like kind of novel enough and they haven't been something that was like just written about in the news. So one of the like actual mechanics of getting a story, this is like pretty tactical. So if you want to get your news in the press, basically there's some easy, simple steps. So it's basically getting press is like, you can think of it like a sales funnel. So you're gonna talk to a lot of people and not all of them are gonna convert, right?
Right, and on this note, there are two avenues of doing press. You can either do syndicated press, where you basically give these media companies permission to distribute your story, and you pay for that, and the duration that they distribute your story, as well as the locations that they distribute it at, are based on the plan you choose and what you pay for. And then there's also individual deals you can make with each company yourself, which is where he's talking more about now, where it goes into you're really going to have to do the legwork on that individual communication to establish that price and that arrangement. And those are typically going to be more expensive as well than a syndicated release also. Oh, and another thing though, with syndicated releases, those are typically always temporary. There's a specific time frame on it. But with individual deals, those are going to be typically the ones that are more long term. But at the end of the day, any publication can kind of be temporary. Anything can get shut down or taken down at any time.
And so you shouldn't be upset when someone, like one individual person or reporter or whatever, doesn't write your story. The first thing is like you have to think of a story, right? It's gonna be probably one of those things that I listed up before. The second step is like you want to get introduced to a reporter or multiple reporters who are going to write about your thing. It's like much easier, just like any sort of business development, to actually get in touch with them through someone. It's like, rather than cold emailing them. The best thing to do, I found, is like you want to go to entrepreneurs who are just written about, like your friends who maybe started a startup and they were covered on TechCrunch, get them to introduce you to that reporter who wrote about them. The reason that's good is because, like, from the entrepreneur's perspective, like the easiest thing to do in the world is introduce you to a reporter who already wrote about them, right? They don't like need anything else from that reporter. They're actually doing that person a favor if your story's interesting. It's not like you're asking for interest to investors or potential people that they would want to hire, employees. And then from the reporter's perspective, they're getting intro to someone who they already vetted as interesting. Like they're getting an intro from someone who they know they thought was interesting enough to write about, and so like by the transitive property, you're basically they're gonna think you're probably interesting. So you get like an email that's like, from this guy that introduces you to the reporter, and you want to get in contact with them with enough time that you can actually get them to like write a story, probably a week in advance or more, because they're not gonna like drop everything they're doing to just write about your news. So a lot of people, especially first-time entrepreneurs, will come and say like, I'm launching this product tomorrow. Like, can you get me in this, TechCrunch or something? And that's like probably not gonna happen unless you already have a relationship. The best way to do it, the best thing to do is like give yourself some lead time, get that intro in advance, and then So then you should, like once you set a date for your news to go out, you're going to launch your product like in 2 weeks. You have this intro, you set up some sort of meeting, and you really want to get the reporter to like invest time and effort in you, right? Because they don't like there's like kind of a sunk cost fallacy at play. Basically, the more time and they spend with you, the more likely they are to like actually write something. So the best thing to do is get like a face-to-face meeting, right? Lots of people, report bloggers, actively don't want to meet you face-to-face.
Ray says the more time that they spend with you, the more time that everything is likely to go in that way for you, you know? That reminds me again, I speak about this pretty often, but it's one of those things that when you understand this, it really impacts and you see it everywhere in marketing and you understand how to use it to make your marketing go well, right? It is the mere endowment exposure theory. And that's MERE, and then endowment exposure theory. The rest is right. Oh, okay, it is right. I'm out of it. Sorry, I cannot read shit. Anyway, so that is the idea that the more times and the amount of time, and this is both an amount and length of time that people spend with you, the more likely they are to have associations with you, whether that's positive or negative, right? And this ties back into brand loyalty when it comes to recognition and recall. If someone recognizes you, that means that they can think of you when they are prompted to do so. If somebody recalls you, they can think of you without being prompted. If somebody can recognize you, you are typically second choice. If someone can recall you, you're typically first choice or last choice. And by this I mean, we all know what deodorant is going to be our first choice typically. If you're a woman, you typically know what feminine products will be your first choice. And we all know what will we get if our first choice isn't available, you know, and the same could be with toothpaste, right? And then that's going to be our second choice. And so we go for what we like, the brands we trust. That's what we recall in a good way. That's going to be our number one. And then if that's not available, we'll go with something else we recognize. And so, yeah, you know what I mean? When you understand that, and that's when you just start trying to get your message out there in general, because it doesn't have to be perfect, but the more time people spend with you, the more likely they are to associate with you and therefore recognize or recall you in their purchase journey. So yeah.
But like, if not that, then get like a phone call, right, and get on the phone with them. The worst thing to do is like just have an email exchange, right, because it's very easy for them to like forget about it, ignore it. So you want to like actually try to get in contact with them, set up a meeting. Okay, so then the next step is actually pitch them. What I usually do is actually write out all my news, like the story that I would want to see published, like in bullet points, and I will write out the story, my ideal story, and I'll memorize it, like the entire like set of bullet points. And when I have a conversation with them, if it's in person, I'll like walk them through this. Like I'll have a conversation that's like structured like my outline, and they'll be like taking notes, right? And then they'll go and transcribe those notes into a story. And so it's like like what I wrote will eventually be translated into a actual story. And you know, by preparing, you can actually much more easily control the conversation and not forget critical things like your mentioning your co-founder's name or like what all the features in your awesome app are. If I'm doing this like on the phone, I will like have these bullet points in front of me, and I will make sure to like walk through a conversation that includes all of those things. So you do that. You have a pitch. They take notes. They're going to write the story at this time, and then the next thing is like follow up like a couple days or a day before your actual news goes out. You want to send them an email that says like, this is the time we're launching the app. Like, thanks for meeting. Here's like collateral. Like if you have like a video or photos or something you want them to include screenshots. Like how to spell your co-founder's names and your name. Just like include all the information that I really care about, and I bold it, right? And then that's it. Then hopefully the day comes, you press submit on the release of the App Store, and at the same time they release their article on TechCrunch, and you are famous. Okay, so a lot of people ask us about PR firms. So, I think in the beginning, it's kind of like everything else you do at a startup. You want to do it yourself before you hire someone else to do it. And it's actually pretty easy, especially with tech press who.
Oh, when he's talking about, okay, you do PR and then you're famous, I would say back in the day would definitely be the case where if you did an individual PR campaign, because social media wasn't the way it is now, like you basically would be famous because that would be you going viral if you did PR. But now, and that was back in the days of like cable television being dominant, and now everything is so separated, and so, like there's different apps and different streaming services for every single thing, and then there's all of these social media platforms where anybody can get a big following now, to where doing a PR campaign doesn't really necessarily typically put you any more or less outside of the competition than what you're going to be doing. It's just putting advertising dollars in to automate that process and to associate with bigger brands who can put you in front of an audience you wouldn't otherwise be exposed to, which is still that benefit, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go viral or be famous in today's world, in my opinion. But yeah.
You know, and bloggers who like constantly need new things to write about. And, you know, I strongly encourage people to like try it themselves and kind of get started by learning the process themselves before they hire anyone. One thing I'll say is that like firms can only help you with like kind of the contacts and the logistics, but they can't help you know what's interesting about your company. Or I've never had anyone who's been able to tell me what the stories that I'm producing are. They've only been able to tell me, like like here's a list of reporters that you might want to contact. So you really have to be responsible for thinking about like what's interesting about your company and what are you doing. What's the roadmap of interesting things that you're working on. They're also really expensive. I think we're spending between $5,000 and $20,000 a month, which is like for various firms. That's a lot for a startup, right? It's generally not a good use of money, I would say, especially in the very early days. Getting press is a lot of work, so you should really make sure it's worth it. Like I said, really getting press doesn't mean, it feels like it's like a vanity metric, right? It feels like you're being successful because lots of successful companies, like Google and Facebook are covered in the press all the time. But it doesn't actually mean you're successful. It doesn't, actually give you, mean that you're making money, you're getting users, you're making those users happy. It's, sometimes it's a really good strategy for getting your first 100 or 200 or 1,000 customers, but it's really not a scalable user acquisition strategy. So it's something that's really just like a bootstrap. You can't like just get like infinity articles written about you. Like eventually people are going to like get tired of hearing about your company, and usually that happens pretty quickly, right? Like the whole point about news is it's new, and so
So yeah, what he's talking about is ad fatigue. There's only so many PR campaigns you can do. People do get sick of you, and that being because your story, your historical story, isn't really going to change. So you can only tell it so many times before people get over it. You're gonna have, so that's why you should be doing PR when there's specific reasons why you want to bring people's attention to something, or an event has occurred in your life or something like that, or in your business life rather, in order to do PR, or you're launching specific offers. If you're constantly running PR like, hey, look at me, I'm great, no, people are going to be like, we get it, you think you're great, no one's going to give a fuck anymore, you know what I mean? So yeah, but if you're running ads like, hi, here's this new shirt I'm doing, hey, I just made a new dress, people are going to be like, oh, let me go look at that shirt, oh, let me go see this dress, you know what I mean? So you do have to understand how to use press. And another thing, you can get sales from press, it is possible, but I don't want to get into a whole different ramble about how to utilize press to get sales, so I'm just speaking broadly overview right now. For the most part, press is focused on awareness. You eventually long term can get to sales from press, but immediately that's not going to be the immediate result of press. The immediate result of press is attention and awareness and interest. You're going to be getting impressions. It's to get traffic to something, and then what you do with that traffic is how you can get the sale. You know what I'm saying? So understanding what the purpose of press is for and how to use it so you don't fuck yourself up will then help you not get to where you have ad fatigue.
it's pretty hard unless you're Google to like get covered in the press like every week, something. So if you decide it's worth it though, like you do want to have like a regular heartbeat of news. So that's like something where you're planning out those types of what you're thinking about what you're doing that matches those maybe 7 story types in the future. And like when I was working primarily on marketing and PR, it would be I would like make a schedule on like a calendar and when we're going to launch things and like make sure to space them out, but like have them appear at regular intervals so that people like didn't forget about us, and we could kind of maximize our coverage. And you really want to keep your contacts fresh. It's like a really relationships business. So once someone writes about you, you should keep going back to them for more for writing about to write about you in the future. It's kind of like when basically people you're more likely to do something for someone you've already like done something for. You really like it's if you just I would try to establish good relationships with a couple of reporters over time that you can go to break news, and it will come in handy later if you ever have a position. If you're fortunate enough to be in a position where people are writing negative things about you, having relationships will help you kind of get your side of the story out. And the last thing is like it's kind of golden rule really, or maybe more like pay it forward really applies here. Like you should help your fellow entrepreneurs get coverage because they'll help you get coverage. The best way to get coverage is really through these like warm introductions. And so whenever I'm meeting with reporters, I always help like throwing out the names of like other things that I think would be interesting stories for them, and usually that comes back. The reporters like it because it's like helping them find interesting stories, and you're more likely to get leads back from those entrepreneurs that you help out.
I've always thought about this and used this concept when it comes to backlinks in terms of getting people to link to me and me linking to other people online, but I've never thought about this concept in terms of networking. When it comes to referrals, obviously I've always tried to encourage people to write about other people in my network, and I've always submitted my people in my network to get written about in press. But I've never thought about the concept of, whenever I have gotten press opportunities for myself, I have been so self-absorbed in my own moment, getting that awareness for me that I didn't connect that to putting the next person involved. And so I really love that advice right there. I think that's beautiful.
So if you're interested in learning more about press, there's 2 resources that I really liked. Jason Kincaid, who's a former TechCrunch reporter, just wrote a really great overview that covers a lot of things I just talked about in more depth and from the blogger side. That was a really great book. And then kind of an evil resource is this book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, which was written by one of the former marketer at American Apparel. And he talks about like a lot of ways that he pretty like evilly actually manipulated the press. But I think it's a pretty good look into like the psychology of like how people things spread on the internet, how stories spread on the internet, and it's like valuable to take a look at. Cool. That's basically it.
Well, if you look into American Apparel and their downfall, it's been known, that a lot of fucked up shit went down there. So I wouldn't necessarily take. I mean, I'm sure you can, when you're given a pile of shit, you can only do so much to turn that shit into gold. So to that extent, I think that is the perspective I would read that book from. But I wouldn't take the concept of like, I mean, maybe you could if that's the way you move, but I don't agree with the concept of you have to lie to do well in media. Or I hate that concept. I don't do well in business situations. So for example, I keep having this issue with the regional directors where they don't fucking block off their goddamn calendar. Put a bit on a fucking calendar, and the day of they want to fucking tell me they're not going to be fucking available, bitch. And they didn't fucking block off their fucking calendar, and they didn't fucking tell me. It's one thing. No, it's one thing if something just comes up. Totally get it. I'm an adjustable person. No, I'm not. But I try to be adaptable. I am understanding. You know what I mean? Like, but it's when it's every fucking time. No, this isn't, oh, shit just came up. It's, you don't give a fuck about the damn schedule, bitch. So, and then they want to be like, well, just lie to the customer. No, I'm not going to fucking lie. Why? Because if this is how you treat them now, this is how you're going to keep treating them, they should know what the fuck they're getting into. They need to know what to expect. What I will say is we need to reschedule. And if they ask why, what I will say is we no longer have availability. I won't necessarily tell them, hey, we're rescheduling because the regional director is being a fucking flake. Instead of just saying, we no longer have availability. But you know what I mean? Like, that's how, so to a point, I guess, like, I just feel like there's a difference, though, between choosing not to reveal everything, because why would you embarrass somebody or make them look bad, versus outright lying. You know what I mean? Like you can still tell the truth. Just still tell the truth. So in PR, obviously, it's going to be to a point your job to take that truth and present it in a way that doesn't make people want to not interact with the business anymore. That is the job of somebody in PR. But on another level, I feel that where a lot of people in PR and the law go wrong is trying to cover things up. Because when you cover things up that you know you did wrong instead of taking accountability, the truth comes out later, and then you look even more bad. You look even worse. It's better to be accountable, in my opinion. Because then it's like, when you're accountable, no matter what you do, people are going to have their opinions about you, right? But when you're accountable for it, it's like, so what? So now what? I've owned up. I'm making amends. I'm doing the restitution. Now what, bitch? You know what I mean? Like, there's to a point that eventually they forget about it, they let it go. They may remember it if you continue to act in that way, but if you act in a good way going forward and you took accountability for what you did, people, like, eventually there's only so much holding that over your head anyone could do. You know what I mean? It's when people try to act like they didn't do the thing, that's when it always will. I see it every time. I always see it blow up. But anyway, okay, I'm sorry. We're going to keep going.
One question? Just one? Two? Okay, 2 questions. Or 0 questions.
When's the right time to start worrying about press altogether?
When is the right time to start worrying about press altogether? I think it's a really good way. Like, if you just, the first time I launched my first products in our first startup, for a lot of them we got like 0 attention, and we didn't really know how to even get 100 users. I think it's a really fine way to get 100 users, and a lot of companies in YC, when they first launch a product, will encourage them to get out and just do one TechCrunch story to like get a few people to see it. It's good to get in the practice. I wouldn't like obsess over getting like coverage in multiple outlets or anything like that in the very beginning. All right, anything else? There.
It seems like the biggest story about the Pokemon thing. Yeah. So, like, how much of a role did you guys actually play in getting that out in press, or was it just like, oh, shit, like, this was awesome?
So Twitch, had this thing called Twitch Plays Pokemon, where developers set up like a Pokemon Game Boy game that was controlled by chat. So millions of people would be typing in A or B, and like the character would wander around aimlessly. And that was like a huge news story. And I think that what we did was, there's a couple of parts. One, we set the stage by having other news stories that so when someone from the BBC would Google like Twitch and be like, what's this crazy thing that everyone on Reddit is talking about, they would like have some context. The other thing is like we didn't come up with the idea for Twitch, right? That was like fortuitous, but we helped like give it legs by making the company available to talk to reporters and suggesting follow-up stories about like there were stories not just about Twitch Plays Pokemon because 100,000 people were watching this Pokemon game, but because it finally like there were stories when they beat the game, and there were stories when they launched Twitch Plays Pokemon Crystal or whatever the next Pokemon version was. And, like so we kind of gave that story like a little bit more legs, but we didn't originate it. It was a community really who originated it. All right, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
I want to start with.
Oop, I forgot to unmute. And then the next video started playing. So that was the end of that. I thought that was a great video. And I really love the way that they integrated the Pokemon gaming into their development of Twitch with their PR for it. I thought that was really cool. And this was, before Pokemon Go. So people weren't necessarily, because I feel like after Pokemon Go came out, that was such a big craze that right now people are it's hit or miss, right? Everybody's still either really in love with Pokemon or a little fatigued over it because of the Pokemon Go craze from like 2016, 2017, but then I also feel like there was a resurgence too because that app was that initial launch, and at that time you couldn't really do as much as you can do now. And so then the more capabilities they added to the gyms, again, the last few years, there's been another kind of resurgence, in my opinion. Particularly, like there was that first resurgence around when it first launched, around 2016, 2017. And then it came again, was it 2017? I can't remember. But, and then it came out again, like another kind of resurgence in popularity around COVID time, in my opinion, when people couldn't really do the normal socializing that they were doing. And anyway, so I do think that it's interesting that from 2014, before all of this, Twitch is talking about how they utilized Pokemon before, and at that time it was before Pokemon Go, and so people, they were very stationary with their Pokemon, and they had the ability to play on their DS and their operating systems and to chat with people in that way. But to be on a streaming service for gaming and have that bigger access to a larger community in one moment and be able to play together in that moment kind of thing, I think was like a huge PR thing, and huge with community building within that space. That's a really cool thing to do and something to consider, like in terms of applying it to your own marketing, right? But anyway, so yeah, I'm sorry I just spent so long talking about Pokemon. But I really like that last lecture. I really liked how they talked about the 3 different things in terms of like getting started, doing things that don't scale, and press. I really enjoyed the concept of where in each aspect none of it was isolated, it all connected together. And so they were all talking about each other's topics in their own field, to the point where at first I was like, wait a minute, is this out of order? And then I realized later on, oh no, it's just all connected, right? And so I think a lot of people, they see business as isolated departments, and yes, to a point, a business as it grows does become isolated in its departments, and it's kind of important to do that because you have to manage the workload and things. But on another level, all of the work that everybody does in a business is all connected to keep that business going. And so by looking at how the different departments come together to push a startup forward, I think that can really help people when it comes to not only building up a new business for themselves, but considering how to create a sense of rejuvenation in every marketing campaign that they begin, regardless of how long your business has been in business, And so just to recap today's stream, We started off with our trial exhibits. We're going over the Google search monopoly cases. From the 2020 case is when it was originally filed, and the exhibits are from 2023. And this is our 12th video on these trial exhibits, and now we have done 54 total trial exhibits. And this time we went over a couple of letters. Let's see here. Did I save that? Let's see. Yes, we went over. Actually, it was just one letter. We went over a letter from David Drummond of Google to Bradford L. Smith of Microsoft. So this is the legal counsel communicating together, if I understand correctly. And they were talking about issues related to bundling the Microsoft search with Internet Explorer, and Google was very concerned about their placement and making sure that the updates to Internet Explorer in 2005 wasn't going to impact their ability to be the default, you know what I'm saying, or to have people be able to select them to be the default. And this is from 2005, and Longhorn was the code name they gave to the updates they were doing to Internet Explorer. And then we also looked at an email from Udi Manber, I think I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry, of Google. I don't know his job title, to Hal Varian of Google. And Hal is one of their economist people. And this email was related to scale. And in the email, Udi was basically complaining to Hal about a way somebody in the press had quoted Hal speaking about scale. And so they were going back and forth about Hal's wording, and so Hal was just letting him know exactly what he meant. But what I got out of that email conversation, they basically admitted that scale was crucial to their performance. And this matters because in the trial, Google was trying to claim that the way that they scaled, while it did influence the search results given, it didn't necessarily impact their ability to perform as a company. But this email kind of said otherwise, if that makes sense, if I'm using the right words. And if I process this correctly, because remember, I'm not a lawyer, I just like marketing, and so I could be dead ass wrong about what I interpreted from this information. So we just went over two things today from those trial exhibits, because the first one was long as fuck, but I'm hoping next time I cover the trial exhibits we can get through more. And so then after that, we went and we checked in on how Safety First Boutique is currently performing with their marketing. And previously, I had been looking at their marketing strategy, and I had done a live stream where we kind of tracked how fast it took for her to sell out after one of her launches. And so so this one, it does seem that she didn't sell out of this launch as fast as that one did, because we saw that one go, I think it was like literally in that live stream, she sold out of that bitch, you know what I'm saying? So this one, I decided that I wanted to talk about her last night, and so she's basically seeing her website was in the same position from last night to today. But yeah, we went over basically her strategy in terms of how she operates with launches. She does restock launches and promotes specific dates where she has a restock live on her website for you to shop from. But then the rest of the year you can't shop from her. And so she kind of builds up that anticipation by limiting the times that people can buy from her. And her marketing content draws that engagement. And then that limitation kind of creates that anticipation, which drives the action where people do buy a lot from her. And then we watched also the 8th lecture of how to start a startup today from it used to be Y Combinator, but they changed it to YC Root Access. We watched that, and we watched Stanley Tang, who founded Doordash, on how to get started. Walker Williams founded Teespring. He talked about doing things that don't scale. And then we looked at Justin Kahn of TwitchTV, the founder and partner at Y Combinator, now known as YC Root Access or something like that. And that he talked about press. And I really enjoyed that video, but I just kind of feel like I already recapped it, so I'm not going to do that again. But anyway, so yeah, so that was a live stream today. Thank you for joining me. The next live stream I plan on, well, I think it'll be next, unless something comes up that I randomly decide I want to cover before then. But currently, next I plan on covering the Monopoly case again next, and we're just going to keep banging out however much more I can get through of those trial exhibits. So yeah, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day and a great Labor Day weekend and shit like that if you're watching this live or during this weekend or some shit. And yeah, I hope you have a great day. Where the fuck is my button at, man? I do this every fucking time. Like, leaving this live stream really feels like when you tell somebody goodbye and then you both start walking the same direction after you've already said bye to each other, because I say bye, then I'm looking for my fucking button. Anyway, alright, bye! Thanks for watching! Join the loyalty program at noladevchild.com/loyalty and check in during live streams to get points for rewards.